Chapter 1135. Looking at the gradually approaching heavenly Wolf Island, the archmages of the 7 families of purgatory in the magic airship hall of the Grimoire Heart revealed fanatical expressions. With Hades as the leader, everyone here had the same goal. Jerf. He was the most vicious and evil dark mage in the history of the magical world. Not only was he the ancestor of dark magic, but he also had a great impact on the current world. For example, the so-called demon race was a race created by the black mage Jerf. For the past 400 years, stories of the devil race harming the human world had been circulating on the continent almost all the time. It was obvious how much harm this race had caused to humans. It was precisely because Jerf created such a race that he became the most vicious and evil dark mage. However, this was exactly what some crazy people were pursuing. Just like how there were people who believed in the devil race and people who yearned for the devil race, there was no more suitable belief and pursuit than dark mage Jerf. Therefore, to the people of the Grimoire Heart, Jerf was a godlike existence. Now that the existence that they had been pursuing for so many years was right in front of them, everyone was excited. Even Hades was excited. The essence of magic is darkness. It was because I understood this that I became a resident of darkness. Hades clenched one of his hands tightly, and a pitch-black magic power surged out of his body. Since the essence of magic is darkness, then as the ancestor of darkness, Jerf is undoubtedly the true leader of the abyss of demons. He is the one who grasps the supreme truth. That's why we need Jerf. Erudia's emotions seemed to be a little agitated. Let Jerf become the king of the world and create a world where only magic exists. Only humans who have mastered magic can survive. Ordinary humans will never be able to exist in this world of magic. That's our goal. For this, we'll do everything we can. Hades glanced at Erudia below. Erudia, is the news that Azumar sent back accurate? Azuma won't make a mistake in this kind of matter. The expression in Urusha's eyes changed slightly. I'm afraid that Jerf has really fallen into the hands of Fairy Tail. Is that so? Hades looked in the direction of Heavenly Wolf Island expressionlessly. You've given me another reason to destroy all of you. Fairy Tail. The group of Grimoire Heart sorcerers also more or less revealed some cruel emotions. At this moment, Meldy, who had been looking ahead in silence, was startled. She pointed to the front. What is that? Hearing Melty's words, everyone shifted their gaze to the Sirius Island outside the glass window of the airship. Everyone's eyes, including Hades's, narrowed. In the air above the celestial Wolf Island, in front of the path that the magic airship was traveling on, there was an ark that was made of dazzling gold, and its wings were made of emerald gems. It looked like a flying bird, and it was hovering in front of the magic airship. Everyone present, including Hades, could see it clearly. On that incredible ark there was a person standing against the wind. Noah slowly raised his head and looked at the magic airship that was gradually approaching. On the ark named Vimanas, Noah's pitch-black and deep eyes exploded with a frightening expression. I've been waiting for you for a long time, Hades. This sentence was very soft. It was so soft that it was drowned out by the surrounding whistling wind as soon as it came out of Noah's mouth. However, on the magic airship, the group of Grimoire Heart sorcerers all heard it in disbelief. They heard this sentence that should not have been heard. Whoosh! In the next moment, accompanied by an extremely sharp sound, streaks of light that looked like meteors broke out without any warning. They cut through the sky and shot directly in the direction of the magic airship. Those streaks of light were sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and various other types of treasures. Bang 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 bang. Along with a series of explosions, the relic artifacts that shot over directly exploded on the magic airship, stirring up a violent impact and setting off dense flames. Like missiles, the magic airship was riddled with holes in an instant. Ah! Many people on the magic airships cried out in shock. They suddenly lost their balance and started to sway left and right. Some of them even collapsed on the ground, shaking violently along with the magic airships that were hit. Oh! Is that the magic airship that appeared in the battle against the 6 demon generals? Oration cease? Only Hades remained seated on the throne with a calm expression. He didn't waver in the slightest as he looked at Noah, who was standing on the Vimanas, and suddenly smiled. Very good, little demon. I'll accept your greeting gift for the time being. After saying that, Hades immediately ordered, Eurydia. Yes. Eurydia tried her best to stabilize her body and raised the crystal ball in her hand. Arc of time. A burst of strange magic suddenly reverberated from the crystal ball in Eurydia's hand, causing the crystal ball to light up and illuminate the entire magic airship. All of a sudden, the magic airship that was on the verge of crashing due to being hit by the missile-like noble phantasm suddenly paused. Its entire body turned into a burst of light and gathered together. Not long after, the magic airship, which was on the verge of crashing, returned to its original state and was in perfect condition. Seeing this scene, Noah knew who was behind it. Is it Eurydia again? Noah curled his lips and smiled. I'd like to see how many times you can recover. After saying that, Noah raised one hand. The space trembled, causing golden ripples to fluctuate around the Vimanas. They were like the muzzles of cannons, bursting out bursts of flashes. Then various treasures such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other treasures suddenly shot out from the golden ripples and turned into streams of light. Like bullets, they once again shrouded the direction of the magic airship. Oh no! Murdy cried out in alarm. Those strange weapons are flying over again. Hades's face was gloomy. Just as he was about to stand up, the situation outside suddenly changed. Just as the overwhelming noble artifacts were about to land on the magic airship, a sudden burst of violent magic power suddenly fell from the sky like an invisible shockwave. Under the inexplicable impact, the treasures seemed to be suppressed by something heavy. With a tremor, they all deviated from their trajectories and brushed against the bottom of the magic airship, landing in the air. Noah frowned slightly. Gravity? Gravity. Hades also discovered the source of the inexplicable impact. He seemed to have thought of something, and also seemed to have felt something as he spoke in a deep voice. Bruno, is that you? Just as his voice fell, an even heavier voice echoed from the depths of the hall. It's me. Following the sound of such a voice, a man slowly walked out from the depths of the hall. Seeing this man, the archmages of the 7 families of purgatory were all startled. Bruno? It's him. Not only Zanklo, Murdy, and the others, but even Eurylia could not hide her surprise. Only President Hades can suppress him. The vice president, who has always been forbidden from participating in the guild's activities because he's too dangerous. Why is he here? Ignoring the shock of everyone present, the man named Bruno raised his eyes and stared at the golden arc suspended in midair. A trace of malice flashed in his eyes. That person seems to be flying. A heavy pressure surged from Bruno's body. Chapter 1136. Noah, who was standing on the Vimanas, squinted his eyes as he looked at the magic airship that had been restored to its original state. It seems that it's useless to simply destroy the airship. Saying this, Noah wanted to do something, but a strange phenomenon suddenly occurred again. Wong! The heavy pressure that caused Noah's noble phantasm to deviate from its path suddenly appeared again. Once again, it descended from the sky without any warning, abruptly landing on the entire Vimanas. Dong! As if there was an invisible mountain directly pressing down, the Vimanas that was suspended in midair suddenly shook under the extreme pressure of gravity. Its balance was directly broken, and it began to sway and fall to the ground. Even Noah couldn't help but feel the unprecedented pressure on his body, causing his entire body to become extremely heavy. Magic that controls gravity? Noah couldn't help but be speechless. Is it one of the so-called 7 families of purgatory? Or is it that mysterious vice president? Or is it Hades himself? Saying this, under the extreme gravity, Noah's body slowly emitted a ray of light. No, to be more precise, it should be said that a ray of light slowly emitted from Noah's back. Within the ray of light, a very delicate pair of wings that seemed to be made of pure blue light flashed on his back. Impressively, it was the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing. In the next moment, the delicate light wings spread open, and the entire surface of the wings flashed with a faint blue light. Divide divine. When this voice reverberated from the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, divine dividing, an invisible wave rippled out from the surface of the wings. Wherever the ripple-like wave passed, the gravity that was like a heavy mountain pressing down on the golden arc suddenly trembled, and at an extremely fast speed, it suddenly weakened by half. What? In the magic airship, Bruno, whose body was surging with heavy magic, was slightly surprised. However, at this time a second voice sounded. Divide, Divine. The invisible wave suddenly increased by more than one-fold, causing the gravity acting on the golden arc to seem to be suppressed, and once again weakened by half. Divide, Divine. And when another voice sounded from the White Dragon Emperor's light wings, Divine dividing, the gravity acting on the Vimanas was once again fiercely swallowed by half, leaving only a small portion that was unspeakably weak, allowing the Vimanas to once again regain its balance. The White Dragon Emperor's light wings, Divine dividing, that was created with weapon refinement magic, had a huge restriction. Not only could only be used 5 times, it could only be used once every 10 seconds. However, it was already enough to deal with this kind of situation. Thus, under the weakened gravity, Vimanas, who had regained its balance, directly ignored that part of gravity. With a sudden jolt, it suddenly burst into the air, and with an extremely fast speed, it soared into the sky, and after drawing a perfect arc, it landed back on the ground. The group of Grimoire Heart magic shooters did not even have time to react, as the Vimanas that had drawn a perfect arc fell from the sky, and heavily crashed into the pitch-black magic airship. Bang! In the dull sound of the collision, the pitch-black magic airship was fiercely hit by the golden arc, and with the undiminished momentum of the Vimanas, it fell in the direction of the celestial Wolf Island like a meteorite. Dong! Suddenly, the golden arc in the pitch-black magic airship heavily crashed onto the beach at the edge of the celestial Wolf Island at the same time, raising an astonishing amount of sand and dust that enveloped the entire space, like a sandstorm that expanded outwards. However, if someone were to observe carefully, they would definitely be able to discover it. Just as the magic airship was about to hit the ground, the golden arc suddenly disappeared. Although the pitch-black magic airship did not avoid the fate of directly hitting the ground, before that, a few figures suddenly flashed out of the magic airship, and flashed in all directions. Thus, the magic airship that really hit the ground was the Grimoire Heart magic airship, and the magic artifact called Vimanas had disappeared without a trace before that. As for the Grimoire Heart magic airship, even if it fell to the ground, it still did not cause any injuries to the Grimoire Heart magic airship. With Hades as the leader, the group of Grimoire Heart magic shooters all flew out of the magic airship that had fallen, and landed on the ground. Hades, who was standing at the head of the group, had a sullen expression on his face. He raised his eyes and looked straight ahead. There, a figure had already appeared there without anyone noticing. Looking at the figure, Hades straightened his body and spoke in a deep voice. I haven't seen you for a few months, kid. Your skills have improved. You haven't improved at all, is it because you're old? Facing Hades' gloomy gaze, Noah said indifferently. Since you're already at the age of entering a coffin, you should have obediently let someone build a grave for you, instead of coming out to be a hindrance to us kids. How much do you not want to die? Noah's unceremonious and ruthless words made Hades' face even gloomier, and also made the group of Grimoire Heart magic shooters tremble in fear. This was the first time they had seen someone who dared to speak to Hades in such a tone. Yet, the other party had the qualifications to make Hades speechless. It seems that you've improved not only in your ability but also in your ability to talk. Hades' face showed a ruthless expression. I wonder if you'll still be so eloquent when the demons have hunted all the fairies? Wait until the demons have hunted all the fairies. Noah looked at Hades sarcastically. You've really gotten old, can't you see the situation clearly? Then let me make you see the reality. After saying that, Noah raised a hand. At the same time, in the forest by the beach, a series of footsteps slowly sounded. The group of Grimoire Heart magic shooters turned their gazes in the direction of the forest, and then focused their gazes in unison. In the forest, with Makarov at the head, the magic shooters belonging to Fairy Tale all walked out, each of them with a cold expression on their faces. Seeing this scene, Hades narrowed his eyes. Makarov. Precto. No. Hades. Makarov took a step forward, his short body exploding with a terrifying aura as he stared at Hades. It's time to decide the victor. Following Makarov's words, Laxus at the side threw out a person in his hand, letting him roll in front of Hades. With Hades at the head, the group of Grimoire Heart magic shooters all lowered their heads and looked at the person who was rolling in front of them. When they saw the person's full appearance clearly, Their pupils suddenly shrank. It was actually Azuma who had arrived at Celestial Wolf Island first. However, at this time, not only did Azuma's body have the injuries from the battle with Noah, but there were also traces of electricity. Sorry, this guy was sneaking around the Celestial Wolf Tree, so I was a little heavy-handed. Laxus curled his lips at the demons whose expressions were changing. I didn't cause you any trouble, did I? You think you can hunt the fairies by doing something to the Celestial Wolf Tree? Noah laughed coldly. Unfortunately, you are the prey demons. Chapter 1137. When he first met Azuma, Azuma had told him that the grimoire heart that attacked the Celestial Wolf Island was only the vanguard. Hades and the other 7 family members had yet to arrive at the Celestial Wolf Island. However, why was it that Azuma, one of the 7 family members of the Purgatory and also a member of the Corps, had arrived at the Celestial Wolf Island before the rest of the Corps members? At that time Noah, who was filled with anger, did not think too much about this question. When he returned to the fairy tale camp and completely calmed down, he faintly sensed that something was wrong. Noah could be considered to have some understanding of the Celestial Wolf Island. When the Celestial Wolf Island was mentioned, he would definitely think of 3 special places. The first was the barrier that enveloped the entire Celestial Wolf Island. This barrier could render all probing magic ineffective, making it impossible for anyone to use magic to find the Celestial Wolf Island. Only Fairy Tale, who knew how to get to the Celestial Wolf Island, knew the location of the Celestial Wolf Island. The second was the mausoleum of the first guild leader, Mavis. In terms of form, the importance of this mausoleum to Fairy Tale was beyond doubt. And in terms of substance, Mavis' mausoleum sealed the 3 great spells of the Fairy Tale. It was impossible to say that it was not special. As for the last one, it was the Celestial Wolf Tree. That wasn't just a tree. Thinking back, when Noah first came to the Celestial Wolf Island, he faintly sensed the uniqueness of the Celestial Wolf Tree. This tree possessed inconceivable power. It could provide a certain degree of protection and buff to magic shooters with the guild emblem of Fairy Tale. Not only could it increase the magic power of magic shooters, but it could also guarantee that magic shooters with Fairy Tale would not receive fatal damage within the range of Sirius Island. It could be said that as long as the Celestial Wolf Tree was present, it would be difficult for high mages of Fairy Tale to die on the Celestial Wolf Island. As the former president of Fairy Tale, it was impossible for Hades to not know about this matter. Since the Grimoire Heart led by Hades wanted to attack the Celestial Wolf Island and annihilate the Fairy Tale, it was impossible for them not to think of a way to solve the problem of the Celestial Wolf Tree first. You sent this guy to Celestial Wolf Island in advance, so that he could destroy the Celestial Wolf Tree, and make Fairy Tale lose the protection of the Celestial Wolf Tree. Right? Noah glanced at the gloomy Hades, his face full of sarcasm. Unfortunately, your calculations were very good, but you neglected the fact that this fellow seems to be a battle maniac. The moment he arrived at Heavenly Wolf Island, this fellow impatiently ran over to challenge me. In the end, he exposed his whereabouts, which made me recall the problem of the Heavenly Wolf Tree. Then, just in case, I went up to the Sirius Tree to wait for a while. Then this guy really jumped out. Raxus raised one of his hands. There were some sparks of electricity on his hand. He's a good opponent, but he was seriously injured by Noah first. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easy to take him down and still have to worry about the Celestial Wolf Tree. Hearing Noah and Lax's words, the high mages of Grimoire Heart finally understood the current situation. Demons hunting fairies? That was indeed not right. The situation had been reversed. The fairies, who were supposed to be the prey, had the initiative in their hands and had completely turned the tables. However, turning the tables did not mean that they could definitely become the hunters. Even if the fairies were no longer the prey, the demons would not believe that they would become the prey and be at the mercy of others. You're quite capable, Makarov. You've indeed nurtured some good seedlings. Hades glanced at the entire fairy tale. However, you don't think that you can defeat us like this, do you? Hearing this, the group of Grimoire Heart's magic shooters also erupted with powerful auras. The crystal ball in Erudia's hand blossomed with light. Thick black flames ignited on Zanklo's body. Caprico, Luceiros, Cain, Murti, and the rest of the high mages of the 7 families of Purgatory also erupted with astonishing magic power, causing the air to become heavy. In particular, Bruno's magic power surged from his body, causing the surrounding sand and dust to seem as though they had turned into iron particles. They poured onto the ground like a torrential downpour. Sensing the terror of the enemy, the group of fairy tale magic shooters also became solemn. Only Naz looked at Zanklo, whose entire body was burning with thick black flames. He clenched one of his hands into a fist and similarly erupted with a ball of scorching flames. "Leave that black guy over there to me. None of you are allowed to make a move." Naz's words immediately dispelled the solemnity in everyone's hearts. In particular, Gray, who had been staring at Urrutia, stepped forward and spoke in a deep voice. "You're called Urrutia? What? Do you find it familiar?" A flirtatious smile appeared on Urrutia's face, but for some reason, a hint of hatred suddenly appeared in her eyes. "Do you still want to ask me why I look exactly like your magic teacher, that woman named You? You?" Gray clenched his fists tightly. "You really are related to You? Urrutia fell silent and only looked at Gray with eyes full of hatred. This made Gray grit his teeth and take a deep breath. "Leave that Urrutia to me." Seeing that Naz and Gray had both found their opponents, the rest of the fairy tale members also stared at the rest of the Grimoire Heart members as if they were looking at prey. That gaze naturally infuriated the group of magic shooters, who thought that they were the hunters, even though they were the Devil's Heart. What an irritating gaze! Zanklo's entire body was burning with black flames as he laughed insolently. "Can you kill them all? Can you all fly?" Bruno asked in a low voice as he stared at the people of Fairy Tale. "Fairies have wings. What will it be like when they fly? I'm really looking forward to it." Sensing the anger and murderous aura surging from Bruno, Zanklo, and the rest, Hades waved his hand expressionlessly. "Do as you like. Torture these fairies however you want." This sentence completely ignited the tense atmosphere of the entire scene. "Torture the fairies?" Makarov abruptly raised his head and roared furiously. "Do you think you can do it?" As soon as his voice fell, Makarov's entire body suddenly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into a giant that blotted out the sky. "Come and try the attack of the fairies that you want to torture. Demons!" In the next second, a huge fist brought with it the whistling of the wind. With an astonishing momentum, it fiercely descended from the sky and blasted towards the Grimoire Heart. Boom! Amidst the roar, the entire ground trembled under the direct impact of that huge fist, and it stirred up the sand and dust that filled the entire space. However, before that happened, the group of Grimoire Heart magic shooters scattered one after another, including Hades. However, just as Hades was about to leap up, a figure rushed toward him. Immediately, Noah's pitch-black, deep eyes were imprinted into Hades's eyes, causing his expression to change. Whoosh! Amidst the whistling of the wind, a foot swept out and heavily kicked Hades' abdomen. Boom! With a muffled sound, Hades was sent flying in the direction of the forest. Chapter 1138. Shio! Amidst the sharp sound of air breaking, Hades, who had turned into an arrow leaving the bow, was sent flying backwards with extreme momentum, shooting straight into the forest. Bang 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 bang. Hades, who had turned into an arrow that left the bowstring, flew backward. Wherever he passed, the trees were broken one by one under the impact. The trees fell one after another amidst the waves of wood fragments that rose into the air. Shwa! After smashing through an unknown number of trees, Hades fiercely clenched his teeth and swung his hand. A chain made of pure magic power formed in his hand and shot out. The claw-like wedge at the front bit down on a huge rock. Immediately after, with a snap sound, the magic power chain straightened and abruptly stopped Hades, who was flying upside down. Hades stabilized his body and landed on the ground. Feeling the sharp pain from his abdomen and back, Hades' face became ugly. That brat, when did he have such a degree of physical ability? He still remembered that a few months ago, Noah's physical ability was not strong enough to send Hades flying so far with a kick and break so many trees in the process. After a few months, how could Noah's physical ability have become so terrifying? It must be some kind of magic that strengthens the physical ability, right? Hades could only think of it this way. In fact, in the last battle with Hades, Noah had indeed used the strengthening magic that could strengthen the physical ability. It was no wonder that Hades thought so. Then, Noah's voice slowly sounded from the front. "You really haven't made any progress, but I can't blame you. After all, it's only been a few months. You've lived for so long. If you could become stronger in a few months, then you wouldn't need to play so many tricks." Saying such a sentence, Noah leisurely walked out from the front. His gaze was fixed on Hades as he spoke indifferently. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Hades, in order to protect the guild and my companions from you, I had no choice but to leave Fairy Tale a few months ago to find a way to strengthen myself. Now, I'll let you prove to me just how much I've improved compared to a few months ago." The moment he finished speaking, a wave of phosphorescent air burst out from Noah's body. That was not magic power. It was divine power. "Cold Steel Queen, the holy sword that slays demons and demons, turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with divine power." Since Hades was the second-generation leader of Fairy Tale, it was clear how long he had lived until now. Even Makarov was already more than 80 years old. Hades's age was at least 100 years. Although it was not impossible for him to live to this age, it was indeed strange that he could still be so lively. But no matter what, Hades had lived for so many years. In order to get close to Jerv, he had also been exploring the abyss of magic. Even the lost magic of the 7 families of purgatory was taught by him. How could he not be experienced and knowledgeable? Under such circumstances, Hades was surprised to find that the language Noah was chanting like a spell was a language that even he did not recognize. But that was to be expected. The spell Noah was chanting now was the Elvish language that existed in the sword dance of the elves' world. It was not the language of this world at all. In the spell written in the Elvish language, a dazzling light bloomed from Noah's body and gradually gathered on one of Noah's hands and formed in his hand. At the next moment, a sacred sword that was shimmering with silver light appeared in Noah's hand, surrounded by a series of light particles. "Aster," Noah muttered to himself. "It's time." Suddenly, a voice that only Noah could hear sounded in his heart. "I am Master's sword. Everything will be as you wish." Thus, an astonishing light shone from the elven magic equipment called the Demon Slayer, illuminating the entire space. What? What is that? Feeling the power of the Demon Slayer, that was completely different from ordinary magical weapons, and the phosphorescent aura that surged around Noah, Hades exclaimed in surprise. "That is not a magical weapon. Moreover, that brat is not using magic. How is this possible?" Ignoring Hades' shock, Noah's eyes flashed. His feet tightened and his body suddenly shot out like a bullet. In an instant, he appeared in front of Hades. Clang! The Demon Slayer, which was covered in a dazzling radiance, let out a sharp sword cry as it tore through the air. It mercilessly slashed down towards Hades in front of it. Under Noah's chop, the elvish device named Demon Slayer created an ear-piercing sonic boom in the air. That momentum and that speed caused Hades's pupils to shrink. He could only raise his hand and block the silver sacred sword that was slashing towards him. Clang! A burst of dense black light surged from Hades's hand. The color was so dense that it was leaning towards purple. It was like the big mouth of a crocodile. Amidst the vibrations of magic, it bit towards the silver holy sword that was slashing towards him. Like a viscous liquid, it heavily collided with the holy sword. Poochie! In the next moment, a clear tearing sound resounded. It was the sound of the Demon Slayer, which was shining with a brilliant white light, cleanly cutting the darkness that was trying to bite him in half. Wah! Hades was finally moved. As for the Demon Slayer that was still moving forward, it brought with it an intimidating light as it descended. Bang! Along with the sound of an explosion, a magical ripple of black and white spread out from the space, directly breaking the nearby trees in half and toppling them one after another, stirring up mud and debris all over the sky. At the center of the impact, Hades, who had always been calm, was finally in a sorry state. His whole body fell out of the impact and smashed onto the ground. After rolling a few times, he jumped up and knelt on one knee to stabilize his body. However, even so, Hades still did not hide his shock. He raised his head and stared at the Demon Slayer in Noah's hand. It actually cut through magic? Hades knew quite a lot of magic that could be used against magic. For example, the Superior Destruction Magic Crush was a magic that could even shatter magic. Therefore, if there was a magic weapon that could cut through magic, Hades would not be surprised at all. However, the Demon Slayer in Noah's hand was clearly not a magic weapon. This was because Hades did not detect any magic at all. Interesting. At this moment, Hades's gaze towards the demon slayer became scorching hot. In this world, there is actually a weapon that is not a magic weapon, and does not need magic to activate it to have such an effect. Can even cut through magic. Is it a power that existed before magic? Or is it a miracle that appeared in this world after magic? If I can study this power thoroughly, I may be able to understand the truth of this world and see the true abyss of magic. Hades raised his head and smiled at Noah's direction. So little brat, give that weapon to me. After saying that, a terrifying burst of pitch-black mana surged out of Hades' body, turning into a terrifying aura that gradually rose. Facing such a reaction from Hades, Noah simply smiled abruptly. You want my Aster? After saying this, Noah's body turned into a sharp arrow and shot out. Then come and try to steal it. Chapter 1139. Amidst the faint sound of something breaking through the air, Noah, who was holding the demon slayer, directly charged forward. It was as if he was standing on the same spot, leaving behind an afterimage. His real body, however, suddenly turned into a flash of lightning, shooting directly towards Hades. Absolute sword skill. Initial form purple lightning. The holy sword, which was blooming with a gorgeous radiance, was like a bolt of lightning descending from the heavens. It flashed through the air, and in the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Hades. So fast. Hades only felt that Noah had suddenly turned into a flash of lightning, and his face was filled with shock. By the time he reacted, the tip of the holy sword was already infinitely enlarged in his eyes. This caused Hades' heart to tighten, and he hurriedly raised his arms. Clang! In the next moment, Noah, who had turned into a flash of lightning, fiercely crashed into Hades' body with a sound of metal clashing. Pung! Hades was sent flying by Noah's purple lightning. He knelt on one knee on the ground, rubbing against the ground, and using his knee and toes to plow a huge gully. Damn brat! Hades, who was still plowing on the ground, suddenly slammed his palm on the ground, and with a pung sound he soared into the air. Then, with a flick of his hand, a pitch-black magic array that was tinged with purple appeared in front of him, and several magic chains shot out. If one were to carefully count the number of magic chains, there were at least several of them. Moreover, each magic chain seemed to be controlled by a person. They were like vipers, and from completely different angles they drew arcs in the air and shot towards Noah at the same time. Seeing those viper-like magic chains shooting towards him, Noah only sneered. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. Without any hesitation, he lowered his body, and like a fierce beast pounced forward. Absolute sword skill. Form 3 Shadow Moon Dance. Just when Noah's body was about to collide with those magic chains, the highest-level elven equipment named Demon Slayer shone brightly and turned into a beautiful moonlight. After leaving an illusory moonlight mark in the air, it swept past those magic chains. There was no suspense. The Demon Slayer, which had turned into a ray of moonlight, cut the magic chains in half. Who? Accompanied by the whistling sound of the wind, Noah cut off the magic chains one by one. His entire body rushed out and swept in Hades' direction. Even though his speed couldn't be compared to when he was using purple lightning, one could still only vaguely see an afterimage. Protect me! Darkness! Hades' face darkened as he suddenly spread out his hands. Waves of pitch-black demonic energy crazily surged out from his palms, turning into a dense darkness. Like a fog, it began to revolve around Hades' body. I can dance with magic. How can a mere brat who can't even see through the essence of the path of magic defeat my magic? Noah, who was rushing in Hades' direction, heard his opponent's low roar. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a mocking smile. Indeed, in terms of the realm of magic alone in this world, I'm afraid that there is no human who can compare to you. Perhaps you have truly reached the realm closest to Jerf. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call you the strongest human sorcerer. Saying such a sentence, the phosphorescent divine energy around Noah's body shook violently like a violent storm. Unfortunately, magic is still magic. In front of Aster, who has the highest level of curse resistance and can cut off all magic and curses, it's still not enough. After saying that, Noah's hand that was holding the demon slayer tightened. Divine energy continuously poured into the elven equipment, causing the holy sword that could even kill a demon king to flash with a blinding light. Absolute sword skill. Form 6 Shattered Fang. In an instant, a thunderous sword heavily pierced into the madly spinning darkness in front of Hades. Noah abruptly released his hand that was holding the sword and clenched his hand into a fist. He fiercely punched the hilt of the sword. The shining silver holy sword directly broke through the dense darkness and shot towards Hades like an arrow. Poochie! Like a laser that shot past Hades' ribs. Blood splashed out from the side of Hades' ribs. His entire body was in a hurry to dodge, and he couldn't even stabilize his body. He was extremely embarrassed as he rolled on the ground, continuously rolling out. Hiya hiya! This time Hades finally let out an angry roar. He fiercely supported himself with one hand on the ground and jumped up, reaching out his hand towards Noah's direction. Accompanied by a trembling sound, purple magic formations intertwined around Noah's surroundings, forming a mysterious pattern. They revolved around Noah's body layer by layer. At the same time, the hand that Hades stretched out exploded with a shocking amount of magic. 100 styles of Amaterasu. In the midst of Hades's angry roar, the magic formations that surrounded Noah and formed a mysterious pattern suddenly exploded. Dong! The shocking explosion was like a physical impact, crazily surging out in front of Hades. It set off layers of flames, stirring up layers of fire waves, covering Noah's entire body. However, almost at the same time, a cold voice reverberated from the center of the layers of flames and fire waves. You really don't know how to learn your lesson. Following the sound of that cold voice, the originally extremely violent and dense waves of flames suddenly stagnated, as if they were attracted by some invisible force, converging in one direction. Not long after, the dense flames and waves of flames all converged on a shining silver holy sword, causing the holy sword to explode with a terrifying amount of flames. What? Hades was shocked. However, at this moment Noah, who did not have a trace of injury on his body, suddenly flashed in front of Hades with a terrifying amount of flames. A pair of deep black eyes met Hades's vision, flashing with a ruthless cold light. Absolute sword skill. Form 4 Flame Slash. Carrying a terrifying amount of flames, the demon slayer heavily slashed in the direction of Hades, whose expression changed greatly, in an incomparably beautiful trajectory. Pung! Compared to the previous explosion with Noah and Hades as the epicenter, the entire scene was like a great disaster, causing the terrifying waves of flames and flames to transform into a storm, spreading in all directions. That terrifying storm of flames almost instantly spread to a distance of 100 meters, dyeing the entire space red, causing the air in this space to become extremely dry, and even slightly distorted and blurred. On the beach, some distance away from the battlefield between Noah and Hades, a group of magic shooters from the fairy tale and the grimoire heart, who were fiercely fighting each other, felt the tremors on the ground and the astonishing movements on the battlefield. Each and every one of them had a shocked expression. That's President Hades's Amaterasu 100 styles ? Holding the crystal ball in her hand, Urudia recognized the shocking explosion. From the looks of it, the battle doesn't seem to be over yet. President Hades has already used Amaterasu 100 styles. Yet he still hasn't won. Don't underestimate Noah too much. Gray's entire body emitted a fatal chill as he stared unwaveringly at Urutia. Since Noah was able to force Hades to retreat last time, then this time Noah will definitely be able to defeat him. After all, he won't lose to an opponent he's already fought once. Naz, whose entire body was also surging with flames, grinned at Zanklo opposite him. This is the power of the opponent I've always wanted to defeat. Is that so? Zanklo's smile was no longer as arrogant as before, but full of anger. Before that, you'll have to die here first. If you can do it, then come and try. The flames on Naz's body surged even more fiercely. Come. I'm already burning. Chapter 1140. Who? The violent flamestorm was still spreading throughout the entire space, causing more and more areas to be covered by the merciless waves of fire. In the blink of an eye, it created another sea of fire. In the center of the sea of fire, Noah, who was holding the demon slayer, tapped his toes on the ground. After retreating for a distance, he stopped and looked ahead. There, the violent flamestorm was spreading to the surroundings, and at the same time, it seemed to be condensed together, rotating and intersecting. It was like a small sun, with some flames undulating on its outline. Even though there was a distance between them, Noah could still feel the temperature of the flamestorm that was like a small sun. If an ordinary human went in, even if it was just for a moment, wouldn't he be directly turned into ashes? However, Noah didn't think that Hades would die so easily. Although, under the buff of the highest level elven equipment called the Demon Slayer in LV. For ability value, Noah's strength had completely surpassed Hades, and he didn't feel any pressure when dealing with Hades, but being able to deal with him didn't mean that he could kill him. With Hades' strength, if he died so easily, he wouldn't have lived for so many years. Facts proved that Noah's guess was indeed correct. The flamestorm that was violently fluctuating and rolling like a small sun suddenly trembled without any warning, and issued a sharp buzzing sound. A heart-palpitating evil magic power surged out from the center of the flamestorm. Noah Dole. In the next second, a voice that sounded like it came from hell slowly echoed from the surging evil magic power that gushed out from the ground. Very good. You are qualified to see the magic power that I have mastered. Let me show you what true darkness is, the true abyss. The frightening magic power that surged out from the flamestorm suddenly shook, and the raging flamestorm and the surrounding sea of fire were all dispersed. Immediately after, Hades's figure emerged from the pitch-black magic wave. Compared to the previous image of a calm god, the current Hades appearance was undoubtedly much worse. The cloak on his body and the horned helmet on his head were twisted into fine fragments in the shocking explosion, causing his old grayish-white hair and beard to flutter in the wind, moving up and down. Various parts of his body had obvious and obscure scorch marks. His clothes were slightly tattered, and he looked as wretched as he could get. Obviously, in the previous shocking explosion, Hades wasn't completely unscathed. However, even so, Hades' body was still surging with magic power that was far more powerful, more terrifying, more profound and more dark than before. That magic power was at least 3 times more powerful than before. And this level of magic power was something that Noah had never felt until now. Feeling such astonishing magic power, Noah tightened his grip on the Demon Slayer in his hand, looked at Hades and said word by word, "You were hiding your strength?" In fact, from the beginning of the battle until now, the whole process had not even been 5 minutes. And from the beginning, Hades had been crushed by Noah. So it couldn't be said that he was hiding his strength. But don't forget, before this battle, Noah and Hades also had a battle a few months ago. At that time, Hades simply didn't have the strength to appear at this level. Therefore, Noah had such a sentence. Hiding his strength. Yes. In the battle a few months ago, Hades hid his strength. You should be proud, little brat. Hades raised his head and looked at Noah. The eye patch on one of his eyes had long disappeared, but it was still tightly closed, while the other eye stared at Noah and said, "Ever since I comprehended the essence of the demonic path, this is the first time I've been forced to release all my strength in battle. So, open your eyes wide and clearly see the domain that you would never be able to touch in the past." After saying this, Hades slowly opened one of his eyes that was tightly shut. Demon's eye open. As the tightly closed eye opened bit by bit, an extremely terrifying dark magic power overflowed from Hades' body bit by bit. Seeing Hades' closed eye, even Noah couldn't help but have a change of expression. This was because Hades' eye was actually a strange blood-red eye without a pupil. As soon as this strange blood-red eye was released, the aura on Hades' entire body changed. If the previous Hades was dark, but at least he was still a human, then at this moment, Noah didn't feel even a trace of human aura from the terrifying magic power surging from Hades' body. Under such circumstances, Hades, whose entire body was fluctuating with terrifying ink-like magic power, had his hair all standing up like sharp needles. He put his hands together and made a strange hand seal. Black Mage Jerf's Book, Chapter 4, Paragraph 12, Forbidden Magic, Heaven's Executioner, Heaven's Punishment. Immediately, the terrifying magic power fluctuating around Hades spread out from his body like ripples, instantly reverberating in the entire space. Under the dark magic power fluctuations, strange tentacle-like undercurrents suddenly rose from the pieces of earth on the ground and slowly wriggled, gathering around Hades. Not long after, under Noah's focused gaze, with Hades as the center, Huge ferocious monsters of different shapes that looked like they were condensed from pure darkness took shape one after another. When the ferocious monsters that seemed to be condensed from pure darkness appeared, the world seemed to have sunk into darkness all of a sudden, as though it had sunk into an abyss. It became sticky and dark. Noah's outstanding sensing ability informed him of this. The ferocious monsters all carried terrifying magic power. Each of them carried magic power that was almost comparable to that of the 10 great Saint Magi. Hades actually created nearly 10 monsters that were comparable to the 10 great Saint Magi with a wave of his hand. This is my strongest magic, the forbidden magic belonging to Chapter 4, Paragraph 12, of Black Mage Jerf's book. With the help of the resonance between my own magic power and the surrounding magic power, I can create virtual life from objects that contain magic power. I can even create demons from pieces of earth, and each of them has great power. Hades's voice also became extremely evil along with his appearance. Do you see that, brat? As long as you can step into the abyss of the path of demons, get close to Jerf. You can even create demons. You can even touch life. This is the true essence of the path of demons. To be able to die under this move. You can die without regrets, right? Ha 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 ha. This was Hades' trump card. This was Hades' true strength. Why was it that Noah undoubtedly forced Hades to retreat a few months ago, but Hades always looked as though he could defeat Noah? This was the reason. A few months ago, Hades did not show his true strength at all. At this moment, Hades finally released all of his mana, and used his most powerful forbidden magic, creating nearly 10 demons that were as powerful as the 10 great holy magi. In the face of such a Hades, if it were Noah a few months ago, he would only end up defeated with a grievance. Unfortunately, Hades was destined to regret it for the rest of his life. He regretted not getting rid of Noah a few months ago. Die without regrets? The next moment, an indifferent voice sounded in the space. So that's how it is. If this is your strongest trump card, then you can die without regrets after defeating it. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's dark and deep eyes suddenly turned into a cold silver-white color, and they flashed with a crystal-like light. A strange fluctuation of magic power reverberated in the dark space like invisible ripples. Under the touch of the invisible magic power ripples, the demons that were comparable to the 10 great Saint Magi froze. Kacha! A strange sound was heard. Chapter 1141. Kacha! When such a voice resounded in the dark space that had turned into an abyss, the strange and terrifying atmosphere in the air suddenly froze. Hades, who was laughing maniacally, froze as well. Wang! Noah's eyes, which had suddenly turned into an icy silver-white color, and were flickering with a crystal-like radiance, slowly lifted up. They trembled slightly and shot forward like a cold sharp sword, shrouding the demons whose strength was comparable to the 10 great Archmage Masters. As Noah raised his eyelids, the bodies of the demons that were gazed at by his ice-cold, silver-white eyes began to change. Kacha! Kacha kacha! Amidst the sounds of ice condensing, the devils whose bodies were pitch black gradually turned into an ice-cold steel color, and their bodies were slowly covered by steel. I magic? Hades shouted in shock. Impossible! How can my forbidden magic be affected by a mere eye magic? Eye magic. As the name suggested, it was a magic that existed through the projection of one's eyes or line of sight. This type of magic wasn't very rare. For example, in fairy tales, Thunder God's Order, Freed, Bikesro, and Abagran all had different types of eye magic. Therefore, although eye magic couldn't be said to be common, it wasn't rare either. The forbidden magic that Hades had was a powerful magic that could create devils, which was used by the legendary dark magus Jerf. Even Hades had to hide such a magic, and had always kept it as a trump card. How could it be affected by a mere eye magic? Unfortunately, Noah's icy smelt wasn't the eye magic of this world. As a result, those evil demons whose strength was comparable to the 10 great Grand Magi were slowly turned into statues of heavy steel under the effects of the icy smelting, and no longer made any movements. Then Noah turned his gaze and looked at Hades. Hades suddenly felt one of his hands become ice-cold and heavy. Kacha! In the next moment, starting from his fingers, one of Hades' hands began to slowly turn into heavy steel. Wah! Hades' expression changed again and again, and he let out a deep roar. He mobilized all the magic in his body and gathered it in his hand that gradually turned into cold steel. Under the surge of magic, the tempering of Hades' arm slowed down at a speed visible to the naked eye, until his entire arm almost turned into steel before it stopped. It should be said that he was worthy of being the person who had been pursuing the essence of the demon path for so many years. In the realm of magic, he could be said to be the person closest to Jerv, or even the abyss of the demon path. Even if he couldn't understand the true nature of Noah's icy smelt, he still found its weakness in an instant. There were only two ways to resist icy smelt. First, possess a special ability or physique resistance, or resistance. For example, the curse resistance of the God Slayer was able to repel the power of the icy smelting. 2. Using pure strength to suppress the opponent. The introduction of this magic said that depending on the opponent's ability and strength, the tempering speed would be slowed down, or even completely ineffective. If the opponent's strength was far beyond Noah's, then even if Noah launched icy smelt, it would still be impossible to have any effect on the opponent. Hades naturally couldn't be stronger than Noah, or even by that much, so he could only use magic to suppress and slow down the tempering speed. However, Noah's icy smelt had another effect. That was, he could crush the part that was successfully tempered with a thought. Bang! Following the sound of an explosion, Hades' arm that had turned into cold steel directly exploded, and thick blood spurted out from the section that wasn't tempered. Ah! Hades let out a blood-curdling scream full of pain. However, Noah didn't have the slightest bit of mercy. While Hades was screaming in pain, his whole body shot out, flashed in front of Hades, and the demon slayer in his hand fell. Poochie! With a clear tearing sound, Hades' other intact arm was separated from his body, and flew into the air amidst the sputtering blood. Ah! Hades screamed in pain, and the pain climbed to the extreme. Then, a foot suddenly kicked out and landed heavily on Hades' chest. Bang! With a muffled sound, Hades, who had lost both his arms, flew out, and hit the trunk of a tree, slid down and sat on the ground. The heavy injury caused Hades to spit out a mouthful of blood, and his white beard was dyed red. But even so, Hades still stared at Noah, and squeezed out 3 words with difficulty. Why? This was the biggest question in Hades' heart, and he was unwilling to accept it. Undoubtedly, a few months ago, without even opening the demon's eye and releasing all his magic power, and without using the strongest forbidden magic, divine punishment, Noah used all his skills in order to fight against him, and he almost died several times at Hades' hands. Now, only a few months had passed and Hades, who had used all his strength in the truest sense, could not even last 10 seconds before being crippled by Noah. Why? Why did Noah become so terrifying in just a few months? The abyss of the demonic path that I've been pursuing for so many years can be surpassed in just a few months. Hades growled like an injured beast. Undoubtedly, Jerv is already in front of me, and I'm just a little bit away from getting him. Why did I fail? Why? Hearing this, Noah cast his gaze on Hades. His cold silver-white eyes slowly returned to the dark and deep color, and a trace of fluctuation flashed through them. After a moment of silence, Noah said, "Although it's a little strange for me to say this, and it might just be a joke to you, I still have to say it." After saying that, Noah lifted his foot and walked towards Hades. As he walked, he spoke. As he walked, he said, "Perhaps the essence of magic is darkness, and darkness is also the origin of the miracles in this world. However, as long as it's darkness, it's destined to be dispelled by light. Evil can't win over good. This is just an empty saying." Noah came in front of Hades and looked down at him. "But no matter what, it's always useful, isn't it?" Hades stood up in a daze. "As long as it's darkness, it's destined to be dispelled by light. Evil can't win over good." Indeed, if it was before this, Hades would have treated this as a joke. However, in this situation, there was nothing more convincing than these 2 sentences. When you chose to fall into darkness, you should have known that as darkness, there would be a day when it would be dispelled. Of course, there would also be times when light would be covered by darkness. In the end, light and darkness, who's stronger and who's weaker, who's real and who's fake, who's winning and losing, these are all relative. There has never been a definite and accurate answer. After finishing his sentence, Noah raised the holy sword in his hand high above his head. What you need to know is that the devil's prank on the fairies ends here, Hades. After finishing his sentence, Noah's holy sword in his hand swung down. However, just as the glittering holy sword was about to land on Hades' body, an inexplicable magical light suddenly descended from mid-air. Noah's outstanding sensing ability allowed him to detect this change. His hand movements paused. Just as he was about to react, Hades, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly raised his head. Hades, who had lost both his hands, jumped up and charged towards Noah. Seeing this, Noah's eyes sharpened. He turned around and kicked Hades' abdomen. With a bang sound, Hades was once again sent flying backward. However, at this time, the magical light that descended from the sky flashed behind Noah and landed on Noah's body. Chapter 1142. Wang. When the light of magic fell from the sky onto Noah's body, Noah's whole body flashed with light. In the light on one of Noah's wrists, a wristband-like pattern slowly appeared, flashing with a pink radiance. At the same time, a cold mechanical voice echoed from not far away. Feel the connection, success. Along with this voice, not far away, a figure appeared in front of Noah. It was a young girl. It was a petite girl who looked to be around 13 or 14 years old. She seemed to be around the same age as Wendy. She had short pink hair and a pair of wing-shaped earphones. She had a tender and cute face that was as cold as ice and was wearing a cloak. Seeing this young girl, Noah narrowed his eyes. Noah's memory wasn't bad to the point where he couldn't remember a person he had seen 10 minutes ago. He still remembered that in the grimoire heart, the 7 families of purgatory, one of them was this young girl in front of him. And in the grimoire heart, 7 families of purgatory, all of them had learned the lost magic personally taught by Hades. In other words, just now, the 7 families of purgatory belonging to the grimoire heart used some kind of lost magic on Noah. Hades, who was sent flying by Noah's kick and heavily smashed into the ground, once again spitting out a mouthful of blood, actually laughed. Good job, Melty. Melty didn't answer, only silently walking in front of Noah, closely looking at Noah's face. Only when Melty came closer did Noah notice. On Melty's wrist, there was a pattern that was blooming with pink radiance. Intuition told Noah that this pattern wasn't just beautiful. Not knowing if she saw through Noah's thoughts, Melty, who was closely looking at Noah, slightly raised her eyes and spat out such a sentence. From this moment on, your life and mine are completely linked. Lifelink? Noah was slightly taken aback. What was the meaning of this? The one who answered Noah's question wasn't Melty but Hades. To be precise, it should be a sensory connection. Hades stood up with great difficulty, ignoring the fact that blood was still flowing out of his 2 severed arms. He stared at Noah with a ferocious look in his eyes. The feelings of the 2 people connected by this magic will be completely linked together, and the feelings of the 2 will be completely shared. Hades glanced at Melty, including pain. After saying that, Hades's scarlet eyes burst out with a burst of bloody light. Bang! Suddenly, Melty seemed to have been hit by an attack that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. With a muffled sound, Melty was sent flying without any warning. He smashed into the ground and rolled a distance away. Seeing this, Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light. There was no longer any pity in his eyes when he looked at Hades. You actually attacked your own companion? Looking at Noah's piercing cold eyes, Hades couldn't help but take a step back. He endured the injuries on his body and forced a smile. I just wanted to prove it to you. Even if you don't want to show your weak side in front of me, you can't deceive yourself. Just now, the pain caused by my attack on Melty, you should have suffered all of it, right? Right, I'll tell you one more thing. Hades couldn't accept that he was afraid of Noah. He showed a fierce expression. Although this magic has no way to share the injuries of one party with the other, it can only connect the feelings of both parties. However, there is one exception. Exception? Noah suddenly smiled. Are you trying to say that death is the only exception? If one party dies, the other party connected by this magic will also die. Hearing this, the expression on Hades' face stiffened slightly. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong. Originally, Hades thought that after he attacked Melty, the reason why Noah didn't feel anything was just that he was forcefully holding on. But now, seeing Noah's calm expression and cold eyes, how could he feel any pain? Could it be that Noah wasn't forcefully holding on? Melty's sensory link was ineffective on Noah? When he thought of this possibility, Hades's heart sank. From the beginning, Hades planned to let Melty find an opportunity to perform a sensory link with Noah, so that he could deal with this young existence who could compete with him without opening the demon's eye. To be honest, in fairy tale, Hades really didn't think highly of anyone. Even Makarov, one of the 10 Saint Archmages, couldn't withstand one move from Hades, let alone the other fairy tale archmages. The only one in Hades' eyes was Noah. Therefore, after meeting Noah in Magnolia and learning of Noah's ability, Hades, who wanted to annihilate fairy tales sooner or later, began to plan to let Melty use the sensory link to get rid of this variable. And now Hades had been defeated in Noah's hands. If even Melty's magic was ineffective on Noah, then Hades would definitely die. Thinking of this, Hades' expression changed. Then, without any hesitation, he shouted in Melty's direction, "Kill yourself, Melty!" These words made Noah's expression freeze. As for Melty, her eyes only slightly fluctuated a few times. Then she got up from the ground and took out a dagger from her arms. This girl was actually prepared to carry out Hades's order. Swish! In the next moment, Melty did not hesitate to ruthlessly stab the dagger towards her own heart. Buzz! However, almost at the same time, a golden ripple suddenly fluctuated in the space around Melty. A chain popped out and wrapped around Melty's dagger, stopping the momentum of the dagger that was violently stabbing towards Melty's heart. Melty didn't even have time to react before a figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Pa! A crisp sound echoed in the air. That was not the sound of the dagger in Melty's hand being slapped away. It was Noah, who had suddenly appeared in front of Melty, who had slapped her on the tender face with the back of his hand. Feeling the pain from her cheek, Melty was completely stunned. She blankly raised her head and looked in Noah's direction. What entered Melty's eyes was a face that was clearly angry. Looking down at Melty, who was blankly staring at him, Noah could not hide the anger in his heart. What do you think life is? As mentioned before, what Noah hated the most was the blasphemy of life for no reason. It was not that Noah hated to see fighting and killing. He was so compassionate that he believed that all lives in the world were equal, and that everyone's life was precious. Noah had always thought that people who deserved to die should die. However, people who did not deserve to die should cherish their hard-won life. Noah did not know whether Melty was a person who deserved to die or not. However, there was no doubt that Hades was a person who deserved to die. Giving your life to that damn guy as a tool to use? Noah coldly snorted. That may be your freedom, but please do it in a place that I can't see. After saying that, Noah turned his head. His gaze was like a deadly arrow, shooting directly in Hades' direction. This time, Noah's murderous intent were no longer concealed. As for you, you have one more reason to die. Golden ripples fluctuated around Noah's body. Just as Hades felt a sense of crisis in his heart, a voice that was 1,000 times colder than Noah's suddenly sounded. Yes, life is precious, but some people's lives should be erased as soon as possible. A thick darkness engulfed the entire area. Chapter 1143. The thick darkness came so abruptly. As a result, when everyone present reacted, the entire space was shrouded in a terrifying dark aura. Not only that, but the darkness that shrouded the entire space also gave off an indescribable pressure. It made Hades and Melty tremble, and fear appeared in their eyes. Even Hades, who was the closest to the essence of the demon Tao, and the abyss of the demon Tao, and had an unparalleled understanding of darkness, was no exception. Among everyone present, only Noah's expression remained unchanged, but his heart sank slightly. He turned around abruptly and looked in a certain direction. Rustle! Almost as soon as Noah turned around, a strange sound slowly reverberated in the air. It was the sound of footsteps. Along with the sound of footsteps, a figure slowly walked into everyone's field of vision with barely audible footsteps. None of the people present, including Noah, could clearly see the full appearance of the person who was gradually approaching them. This was because there was a gust of dark magic swirling around this person like a gentle breeze. Waves of air rippled out and covered most of this person's appearance. However, as the person got closer, everyone gradually saw the rough appearance of this person. It was a young man. He had short black hair, was dressed in black clothes, and had a long white cloth tied around his body. Upon seeing this young man, Noah and Hades reacted at the same time. "It's you?" Noah exclaimed in surprise. Ah. Hades's eyes widened in an instant as he stared at the young man who was gradually approaching him. There was an unprecedented excitement on his aged face. That young man was the mysterious young man who was knocked unconscious by Noah and brought back to the camp with the curse of God. Of course, this young man also had a name. At least that was what Azuma called him. Jerf, the most evil and ferocious dark mage in the history of the magical world. How many years has it been? The young man named Jeffrey lowered his head and said something that made people's hearts palpitate as he approached. How many years has it been since I was as angry as I am today? His voice slowly reverberated in the air, causing the dense darkness that was fluctuating around Jerf to become restless. As a result, the dense darkness that enveloped the entire space seemed to have expanded and become heavier. Clang! As if to contend against the rich darkness, the highest-level elven equipment in Noah's hand, called Demon Slayer, bloomed with bright white light, dispersing the surrounding darkness in an instant. In an instant, light and darkness each occupied half of the entire space and collided as though they were opposing each other. Of course, this was not Noah's doing, but the collision of the Demon Slayer. "Aster!" Noah was surprised. At this moment, Aster's voice sounded in Noah's mind. "Master, that person is very dangerous," Aster said. "I've only felt that kind of darkness from Solomon." Solomon. In the world of sword dance of the elves, he was known as the Demon King, and had once brought about a devastating disaster to the entire continent. His true form was a massive resentment that had inherited the power of the Dark Elf King, who controlled the elements of the world. However, he was unable to control the awakened power of the Dark Elf King, and fell into a frenzy of resentment. In the past, such an existence that could destroy the world had died under the elven magic device that Aster had transformed into. That was why Aster was known as the Demon Slayer. It was precisely because of this that no one was more suitable than Aster to make such an evaluation. In other words, in Aster's opinion, this dark mage named Jerf was able to contend against the Demon King, who had inherited the power of the Dark Elf King. Noah could more or less understand this fact without Aster's explanation. Even though he had never seen Lotus unleash the power of the Dark Elf King, even the dullest person would be able to sense the darkness that surged out from Jerv, let alone Noah, who had outstanding senses to begin with. Noah didn't know if Jerf was really powerful enough to contend against the Elven King, who controlled the elements of the world. However, in the realm of darkness, the evilest and most ferocious dark mage in the history of the magic world was undoubtedly quite terrifying. Otherwise, Aster, who had once opposed the Demon King, wouldn't have provoked hostility and confrontation against Jerf without permission. Translator. Henny translator. Henny translator. Henny Jeffrey raised his head in surprise. At this moment everyone saw it. A pair of red eyes. Although those eyes weren't as red as Hades's demon eyes, as though they would drip blood, they gave off the feeling that they were the eyes of a true demon. Jerf. Hades was so excited that he took a step forward in Jerf's direction. "It's really Jerf." Jeffrey's face turned cold after hearing Hades's words. "Do you really want to see me that much?" Jerf's cold words contained extreme anger that anyone could feel. "To the extent that you don't hesitate to bring about the end of this era?" Jerf's words stunned Noah and Hades at the same time. "The end of an era?" Hades looked at Jerf blankly with a confused expression. "The end of an era?" Noah frowned, and a sense of uneasiness emerged in his heart. That uneasiness was exactly the same as the uneasiness that Noah had been feeling all this time. "It's the evil thoughts of people like you that attracted it." Jerf stared at Hades, his red eyes fluctuating with uncontrollable anger. "Everything is over. You must pay the price for your foolish actions." After saying that, Jerf extended a hand in Hades' direction. A fatal wave of death was gathering on that hand. Seeing this, how could everyone not understand the purpose of Jerf's sudden appearance here? It was just to punish Hades. Wait! Hades exclaimed in horror. However, just as Hades opened his mouth, a long sword suddenly pierced through the air like a bullet fired from a gun. Amidst the crisp tearing sound, the long sword pierced through Hades's heart and came out of his back, flying into the distance. Hades's expression was completely frozen on his face, and there were no more changes. Maintaining this appearance, Hades was like a clockwork puppet. His neck was stiff as he lowered his head bit by bit. When the pierced heart was imprinted in his eyes, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Gradually, he lost all signs of life. The sudden change stunned Jerf as he looked in Noah's direction. Noah, who was surrounded by a golden ripple, didn't even look at the dead Hades. Instead, he met Jerf's gaze and said, "His life is mine." This sentence silenced Jerf. "Although I don't know who you are, you're definitely not an ordinary person. How great would it be if you could kill me?" The dense darkness around Jerf slowly dissipated, and his pair of eyes returned to their original pitch-black color, revealing a tinge of sadness. "But it's already here, and it's too late." After leaving this sentence, a black light surged from Jerf's body, and he disappeared. Noah couldn't care less about Jerf. This was because at this moment, Noah's heart was unprecedentedly restless. Noah's intuition told him that he had to hurry to everyone's side. Thinking of this, Noah immediately turned around. Just as Noah was about to leave, a voice stopped him. "Why?" Melody, who was covering one side of her face, stood up and looked straight at Noah. "Why did you save me?" Chapter 11:44. Melty's words made Noah's body, which had just turned around, freeze. "You aren't affected by the sensory connection, right?" Melty stared at Noah's back and asked, "Since you aren't affected by the sensory connection, then even if I die, you won't die with me. Why did you save me?" Melty only realized that Noah wasn't affected by the sensory connection after Noah slapped her. Even after slapping Melty, Noah's expression didn't change at all. Logically speaking, Noah, who shared the pain with Melty, should also feel the pain from the slap. However, Noah didn't even frown. His face didn't even twitch. It didn't look like he was enduring the pain. In addition, Hades had just attacked Melty, and Noah wasn't affected by the sensory connection there. This made Melty understand. Noah wasn't affected by the sensory connection at all. If that was the case, why did Noah save Melty? No matter how she looked at it, Noah didn't need to save Melty. Not to mention, from her standpoint, Melty was Noah's enemy. Why would he save an enemy's life? And it was her? Melty couldn't understand the reason behind it. In response, Noah didn't even turn around to face Melty. After a moment of silence, he spoke. "Indeed, because of my physique, the sensory connection brought by your magic didn't affect my body. Even if our senses were connected through your magic, the magic effect wouldn't be transmitted to my body." "Then why did you save me?" Melty didn't give up and asked. "You don't have a reason to do that, do you?" "Reason?" Noah's voice carried a hint of laughter. "Only killing people needs a reason. Since when did saving people need a reason?" Melody was completely stunned by his words. Of course, this answer was just for show. The real reason was that Noah couldn't bear to see Melty let others play with her life and obediently obey. If Melty was willing to sacrifice her life for Hades, then it would be fine. However, Noah could feel that Melty was simply following orders, and didn't sincerely want to sacrifice her life for Hades. In other words, Melty was simply obeying orders, and took it for granted, even if he had to sacrifice his own life. Treating life as a tool to obey orders? It was precisely because Noah could not tolerate this that he attacked in anger. I've said it before. If you want to use life as a tool, it's up to you. However, please do it in a place where I can't see you. If that's the case, I won't stop you. Noah turned his head and glanced at Melody, who was staring at him in a daze. "But your life belongs to you and you can't use it a second time. If you can, why don't you cherish it a little?" After saying this, Noah no longer paid attention to Melty and rushed toward the beach. Melty had been watching Noah's back as he gradually disappeared into the distance. After Noah disappeared from Melty's sight, Melty muttered to herself, "That's right. Cherish my life?" After engraving this sentence in her heart, Melty shook her head and suppressed all thoughts. She lifted her feet and walked in another direction. On the other side, Noah shuttled through the forest at his fastest speed and rushed toward the beach. After the all-out battle between Fairy Tale and Grimoire Heart broke out on the beach, Noah took Hades and forcibly changed the battlefield. After all, whether it was Noah or Hades, both of them had power that far exceeded that of the 10 great Saint Magi. Once they started fighting, even if it wasn't earth-shattering, it would still be enough to change the terrain. Under such circumstances, if Noah and Hades were to fight, the greatest possibility was that even the magic shooters of Fairy Tail, who were allies, would be affected. Once he considered this problem, Noah had no choice but to forcibly change the battlefield with Hades. Otherwise, once he needed to release the power of some powerful noble phantoms in the treasury, Noah would have to be restrained for fear of affecting his companions. Therefore, it was necessary to change the battlefield. Moreover, he needed to change the battlefield to a certain distance away. As a result, Noah was quite a distance away from the battlefield where the Fairy Tail and the Grimoire Heart were engaged in an all-out battle. Therefore, when Noah rushed to the beach at his fastest speed, it was already 5 minutes later. After leaping out of the forest and appearing on the beach, the first thing Noah saw was the messy beach. The beach was full of potholes, and it was unbearable to look at. On the beach, the originally thick layer of sand seemed to have been shaved off by at least a third, and exposed rock formations could be seen everywhere. On such a messy beach, a group of Fairy Tail magic shooters, more or less injured, were sitting together, grimacing in pain. Among them, Wendy had been running back and forth between the group, busily treating the injuries of the group of Fairy Tail magic shooters. Her small face was covered in sweat. As for the people from Grimoire Heart, they had long since disappeared. Perhaps sensing Noah's arrival, the group of Fairy Tail magic shooters turned their heads and looked in Noah's direction. "Brother Noah!" Lise, Anna, and Wendy cried out in surprise. "Noah!" Lucy and Rebecca cried out at the same time. Even Myra's eyes lit up the moment she saw Noah, and then a beautiful smile bloomed on her face. The rest of the group looked at each other, and then gave Noah a thumbs up. Seeing this, Noah understood. In the battle between Fairy Tail and Grimoire Heart, Fairy Tail had obtained a complete victory. However, that was to be expected. In order to carry out the mission of perishing together with Noah, Melty found an opportunity to slip away not long after the battle began. The other members of the 7 families of Purgatory might be very strong, and each one of them could even contend with Alusha and Mira. The vice president, Bruno, was even more terrifying, and definitely had the strength of one of the 10 great Saint Magi. However, Fairy Tail still had Laxes and Kildas. In addition, Makarov was also present, and they also had the protection of the Sirius tree. No matter how difficult the battle was, Fairy Tail would win in the end. As for whether the 7 families of Purgatory were dead or alive, and what would happen after the battle, that was not something that Noah needed to care about. Noah only needed to get rid of Hades, and that would be enough. As for the rest, if they wanted to be fish that escaped the net, then let them be. Thinking of this, Noah breathed a sigh of relief. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, Noah's expression suddenly changed. This was because an extremely ruthless aura had suddenly appeared within the range of Noah's sensing ability. Following the appearance of that ruthless aura, an incomparably terrifying pressure descended from the sky, enveloping the entire heavenly wolf island. Roar! In the next moment, a roar that shook the entire horizon resounded, turning into a sound wave. It was as if a substantial shock wave had spread to the entire heavenly wolf island. At this moment, the expressions of all the magic shooters on the scene completely changed. Everyone, including Noah, fiercely raised their heads and looked towards the horizon. In the distant cloud layer, a huge black shadow fell down violently. Chapter 11:45. Roar! When that astonishing roar reverberated throughout the entire heavenly wolf island, the faces of all the magic shooters from Fairy Tail changed. It was as if their brains had been hit by an internal impact, or as if their eardrums had been hit by a terrifying shriek. All the magic shooters from Fairy Tail turned pale in an instant. They covered their ears and let out blood-curdling screams. Even Noah felt as if his entire body had been hit by something heavy from above. His shoulders sank, and his pitch-black eyes violently shook. His heart was also in turmoil. It was different from the rest of the magic shooters from Fairy Tail. In addition to being shaken by that roar, Noah's superb sensory ability allowed him to clearly feel a terrifying aura and magic power. It was like an ancient beast, like a demon from hell. It carried a terrifying and ruthless aura, and an astonishing fiendish aura and magic power that far exceeded human imagination. Soon after, Noah, who was staring at the sky, saw it. In the distant clouds, a huge black shadow slowly descended. It was a dragon. It was a pitch-black black dragon with mysterious blue patterns all over its body. It had a pair of huge wings that resembled feathers. Its head was incomparably malevolent, and its body was incomparably huge. Its entire body carried an extremely frightening and ruthless aura. Such a black dragon slowly descended from the clouds. The air around its body was directly shaken by that terrifying pressure. It was as if a god had descended from the heavens, causing the entire heavenly wolf island to be covered by that huge black shadow. Soon after, the black dragon's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. It raised its malevolent head, opened its mouth full of sharp fangs, and let out a resounding roar towards the heavenly wolf island below. Roar! The terrifying roar that resounded throughout the heavens and earth once again turned into a substantial sound wave. Like a shock wave, it shrouded the entire heavenly wolf island, causing the sand on the beach to turn into a sandstorm that raged wildly. However, the group of fairy tale's magic shooters did not have the time to care about such a change. Everyone just stared blankly at the huge dragon descending from the sky. They had completely lost their ability to react. Especially Kildas. His eyes were constantly trembling violently, and there was a strong sense of horror and fear in them. There was no other reason. It was because Kildas knew this black dragon. Staring at that ferocious black dragon, Noah's expression gradually became dignified. Echinolia. Echinolia. This name was not unfamiliar in this world. In the historical records called Revelation, this name was the main character. It had once destroyed a huge country with its own strength, and was known as the enemy of mankind. It was the most ferocious and terrifying dragon in the legends. Kildas was severely injured by such a dragon in the blink of an eye, and almost died, resulting in the failure of the century-old mission. Noah also found the information about the black dragon recorded in Revelation. Under the guidance of his intuition, after learning about the existence of the black dragon from Kildas. Why would the legendary dragon of destruction, who had destroyed a huge country with its own strength, appear here? Why did it come here? Was this black dragon named Echinolia the cause of the end of the era that Jerf was talking about? These were not important. What was important was that Noah could clearly feel it. The terrifying pressure and violent aura of the huge dragon descending from the sky were all directed towards them. There was no doubt that Echinolia was not here to travel on Heavenly Wolf Island. It was here to destroy everything here. Noah's heart suddenly tightened, and he shouted at the group of fairy tale magic shooters in a louder voice than ever before. Everyone, get out of the way. However, it was too late to remind them at this time. The black dragon that slowly emerged from the clouds suddenly turned into a black shadow without any warning. Like a huge meteorite falling from the sky, it rubbed against the air, causing the air to set off red sparks due to the violent friction, and landed heavily on the beach of Heavenly Wolf Island. Boom! Accompanied by a violent boom, a terrifying shockwave suddenly spread out. It turned into a gale that was 100 times, 1,000 times more terrifying than the storm, wildly spreading in all directions. Under that frightening impact, the group of magic shooters from Fairy Tale didn't even have time to react before they were all blown away by that frightening gale. In the center of the storm, Echinolia, who had smashed a huge hole in the ground, was roaring. Whoosh! In the next instant, the black dragon named Echinolia fiercely swung its huge tail, which seemed to be connected to a blade, causing a sharp trembling sound. The terrifying power contained in it actually caused some distortions to appear in the air. And that blow, which represented death, was thrown towards the fairy tale magic shooters that were blown away. If they were hit by this attack, those magic shooters who were sent flying backwards without any time to defend themselves would definitely lose their lives on the spot, wouldn't they? However, at this moment of extreme danger, a huge magic array suddenly appeared in front of the huge tail, rotating around it. Buzz! An astonishing amount of mana burst out from the magic array. In the blink of an eye, the huge magic array was shrouded in bursts of mana flames, setting off howling gales. They converged together, gradually condensed into a pillar, and then suddenly erupted. Soon after, from the huge magic array, a magic light pillar that seemed to be able to penetrate the heavens and the earth streaked across the sky with a sharp whooshing sound, fiercely shooting towards Echinolia. Bang! The sky-piercing magic light beam collided with the giant tail, which was mixed with a terrifying force, and exploded with a loud bang. Even from 1,000 meters away, The sound of the violent explosion could still be faintly heard. At the moment of the explosion, a shockwave spread out in all directions, shaking Econarolia and forcing him to take 2 steps back with a heavy thump sound. Yes, 2 steps. That magic light beam, which was enough to evaporate a building in an instant, actually only made Econarolia take 2 steps back. However, the moment Econaroglia retreated, from the side of Econaraglia's enormous body, a figure shot out like a bolt of lightning. Absolute sword skill. Primary form purple lightning. Flickering with a gorgeous radiance, the demon slayer was like a bolt of lightning, heavily stabbing into Econolia's abdomen. And then, something that even Noah was surprised happened. Clang! The highest grade elven equipment named Demon Slayer heavily pierced into Econarolia's body. Instead, the sound of metal clashing resounded, as sparks flew from the friction against his body that was filled with mysterious patterns. Aster couldn't even pierce through Econolia's scales. Roar! Stopping his retreat, Econolia raised his head and roared. A huge malevolent claw suddenly lifted, streaking across the air, and in a sharp explosion, fiercely smashed into Noah's body. Bang! A muffled sound that shook one's eardrums resounded. Noah's whole body was like a ball, sent flying by Econolia. The huge force from his body made Noah cough up a mouthful of blood. Then he fiercely flipped over and landed on the ground. His feet rubbed against the ground, and he slid a considerable distance before stopping. Looking up at the ferocious dragon roaring towards the sky, Noah felt bursts of pain coming from his body, and the way he looked at Econolia had completely changed. Chapter 1146. How long has it been? How long has it been since Noah was injured? Since the battle with the infinite dragon god Orpheus in the world of Demon High School, Noah has never been injured again. After a few months, Noah finally felt the pain of a battle again. Judging from the fact that it was able to injure Noah, the strength of the dark dragon named Econarolia could be seen at a glance. It must be known that Noah not only has a LV4 level, but also reached the S-stage durability blessing. His body's ability to withstand attacks has reached the level of steel, and there is also the sword's blessing to weaken physical attacks. Even so, Econarolia's claw managed to injure Noah. Even if the injury is not serious, one can still see Econarolia's power. The power of this black dragon, who destroyed a huge country by himself in Revelation, was definitely comparable to the 5 Dragon Kings in Demon High School. Even more, it is very likely that there is a hidden power that can reach the level of a sky dragon. Roar! At this time, Econarolia issued a loud roar in the direction of Noah, and the roar turned into an invisible shock wave that burst out. Seeing this scene, Noah understood. Econarolia did not have the intention to fight with him seriously. Otherwise, Kieran's attack on Noah would not be as simple as a puff. Seeing this, Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light. Wong! In the vibration of the space, a golden ripple fluctuated in the space around Noah, and a variety of swords, spears, halberds, and other treasures popped out. They directly shot out like a sharp needle that pierced a balloon, and the invisible shock wave fiercely pierced through. Then, the noble artifacts continued to move towards Econarolia, without any reduction in power. Whoosh! The huge dragon tail behind Econarolia once again flashed through the space, fiercely whipping forward, and heavily collided with the rain of treasures. However, the result of those needles being swept away by Econarolia's tail did not happen. After all, previously Noah's demon slayer was not able to cut through Econarolia's scales, right? However, this time the precious artifacts that shot over easily pierced through the scales on Econarolia's tail. Amidst tearing sounds, wounds were left on Econarolia's tail one after another, causing blood to spurt out. Roar! The pain from the tail made Econarolia roar towards the sky. There was finally real anger in its voice. It was apparent that the famous evil dragon was finally enraged and became serious after getting injured in the battle with Noah with a playful attitude. Seeing this scene, Noah raised the corner of his mouth. Sure enough, only treasures with the Dragon Slayer attribute that can cause great damage to dragon-type creatures are effective against that dragon? Muttering such a sentence, Noah silently said in his heart, Aster, you should take a break for now. Yes, master. Aster let out a slightly unwilling voice, but he still obeyed obediently. Thus, amidst a burst of light particles, the elven device named Demon Slayer turned into a small sword and was pinned back to Noah's waist by Noah. The unlimited energy source in Noah's body could be converted according to Noah's will between magic power, and divine power. After Noah gradually familiarized himself with the conversion, he discovered that he could also convert the energy in the energy source into 2 or even 3 types of energy of equal value. In other words, when using 2 types of energy, for example, when using magic power and divine power at the same time, Noah's magic power and divine power would each occupy half of the energy source. In such a situation, although Noah's energy was unlimited, the limited output was also reduced to half at the same time, causing the power of the attack to be reduced to half. If the energy source was completely converted into divine power, then the power of the demon slayer might be able to cut open the black dragon's scales, right? However, to deal with dragon-type creatures, a treasure with the dragon slayer attribute was still the most suitable. Immediately, Noah converted the divine power in the energy source into magic power, allowing the energy source to be completely converted into a source of magic power. Wang. Suddenly, in the space around Noah, golden ripples continuously fluctuated under the support of the boundless magic power. In the blink of an eye, they covered the entire space around Noah, numbering in the hundreds. In the next second, hundreds of treasures emerged from the hundreds of golden ripples. Like arrows released from a bow, they pierced through the sky like beams of light, shooting towards Iconaroglia. Roar! Iconarolia's roar reverberated, but it no longer met force with force against the treasures with the dragon kill attribute. With a flap of the wings on its back, its huge body suddenly floated into the air and flew into the sky. It caused the treasures that were shooting over to directly cut through the air, landing in the air and disappearing from sight. Wang. However, almost at the same time in the sky, around Iconaroglia's body, golden ripples fluctuated one after another, surrounding it. From within, silver chains flowing with golden light abruptly shot out. Amidst the crisp sounds of chains colliding, they revolved around Iconarolia's body. Finally, they bound the entire body of the huge black dragon and hung it in the air. Roar! Iconaroglia let out an angry roar, its body fiercely struggling. Kacha! Kacha kacha! In an instant, under the struggle of the huge dragon body, the chains binding Iconarolia issued cracking sounds. That was only natural. The Enkidu relic was one of the few godly armaments that could only be used against godly beings. Only when it was used against godly beings would it have an unparalleled binding power. For a huge black dragon like Iconaroglia who possessed terrifying strength, it was only a slightly harder chain that could be torn apart with a casual struggle. In a short while, with Iconaroglia's strength, it would definitely be able to break the Enkidu. However, this was exactly what Noah wanted. Amidst the faint sound of something breaking through the air, Noah's figure violently swept towards the horizon, flashing above Iconaroglia's back. In his hand, a large sword with a metallic luster, the sword body flickered with silver light, and the tip of the hilt was inlaid with blue gems. It blossomed with resplendent twilight sword chi, illuminating the entire sky. Roar! At this moment, Iconaroglia truly felt a trace of threat. Looking at the furious Iconaroglia below, Noah's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Fantasy Greatsword Demonic Fall, Ba Meng. The true name of the greatsword blossomed with resplendent twilight sword chi, following Noah's release, suddenly expanded to the pinnacle. Clang! Soon after, amidst a sword cry that resounded through the air, the soaring twilight sword chi under Noah's wave turned into a crescent that fell from the sky, heavily falling on Iconaroglia's back like a crescent moon. Rumble! Amidst a thunderous explosion, terrifying energy ripples erupted in midair, sweeping out. Bang 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 bang. In the forest below, under the influence of the energy ripples, the trees all burst apart amidst muffled explosions. Bang 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 bang. Some towering peaks also burst apart and collapsed under the influence of the energy ripples, bringing along countless boulders that rumbled down from the peaks. The terrifying energy ripples naturally enveloped Iconarolia, causing the entire horizon to tremble as the energy ripples spread, emitting a sharp wail like a mournful wail. That scene was simply like a moon exploding in the sky, extremely shocking. Roar! Within the energy ripples, Iconaroglia's roar finally carried pain. Chapter 1147. Wang. The violent energy ripples and shockwaves were still shaking the entire sky above Skywolf Island, causing the entire sea around Skywolf Island to be affected. With Skywolf Island as the center, a layer of waves surged in all directions. Under the powerful impact, Noah had already spread out the wings on Hermes' boots. His whole body rode the terrifying waves and lightly retreated. In his hand, the dusk sword aura on the greatsword began to slowly dissipate. Fantasy Greatsword. Demon's Fall. Ba Meng. Perhaps many people did not know this name. However, if the name of the owner of this noble artifact was mentioned, then many people would know the origin of this noble artifact. Siegfried. Also known as Siegfried. In a German narrative poem, in Norse mythology's Song of the Nibelungen, he appeared as a hero who slayed dragons. In the world of the God Slayer, Tony's power of protection of steel was usurped from such a character. As a dragon slayer hero, Siegfried's reputation and mythical deeds were not below Perseus. And the holy sword used by such a dragon slayer hero to achieve the great feat of slaying dragons was the fantasy greatsword. Demon's Fall. Ba Meng. Of course, this dragon slayer holy sword had the highest level of attributes against dragons. Even if it was a person with the blood of dragons, it could still cause great additional damage. As a dragon slayer holy sword, the fantasy greatsword, Demon's Fall Ba Meng, level was also as high as A+, and it was an anti-army noble artifact. In Noah's treasure vault, even if it could not be said that there were countless noble artifacts of higher level than this one, there were definitely not a few. However, in terms of lethality against dragons, there was almost no noble artifact that could truly surpass the fantasy greatsword, Demon's Fall, Ba Meng. Therefore Noah took it out. Tightly holding this extremely famous noble artifact, Noah tried his best to stabilize his body in the impact of the waves and energy ripples. His gaze was fixed on the center of the impact. There, the shadow of the black dragon named Echinalia was constantly swaying. Roar! At this moment, Noah could clearly hear that Echinaglia's roars were filled with pain that had never been there before, as well as unprecedented fury. Then the black shadow at the center of the impact suddenly spread out a pair of wings. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, the terrifying energy ripples and shockwaves were dispersed by a pair of wings that suddenly spread open. Exposed in the air, Echinalia raised its ferocious dragon head and roared furiously in Noah's direction. The deafening roar turned into a substantial shockwave, causing Noah's robe to flutter in the wind. Facing the roaring sound waves, Noah looked at the incomparably furious Echinalia, and a deep uneasiness began to emerge in his heart. Right at this time, Echinalia abruptly stopped its furious roar, flapped its wings, and suddenly flew into the sky, stopping in the distant sky. Soon after, Echinalia slowly opened its dragon mouth filled with sharp teeth, and raised its head. Wong! Instantly, with Echinalia's slowly opening mouth as the center, a gust of airflow appeared in the surrounding space without any premonition. It was mixed with an extremely terrifying magical power that frantically gathered in Echinalia's wide-open mouth. The dense airflow and extremely terrifying magic power that converged in Echinalia's huge mouth spun like a whirlpool. Finally, it flickered with dazzling light and condensed into a light wave, like a dragon pearl, that was held in Echinalia's mouth. Seeing this scene, Noah's expression finally changed. Moreover, it was a drastic change. Only at this time did Noah remember something. From beginning to end, Echinalia had not used magic even once. In other words, Echinalia had not used its full strength. At this moment, Echinalia finally used its full strength in the truest sense. The sudden gathering of magic power in its mouth was exactly the same as when Naz, Gajalu, Wendy and Laxus used roar. And judging from the terrifying magic power that the other party had gathered, the black dragon's roar was most likely more terrifying than any magic that Noah had seen before. Noah believed that when the black dragon's roar descended, not to mention him, even the entire Heavenly Wolf Island would be completely destroyed in an instant. At this moment, Noah suddenly turned his head and looked at the Heavenly Wolf Island below. On the Heavenly Wolf Island, his companions who had been blown away by the shockwave caused by Echinalia's fall were lying in a disorderly manner, unconscious. If Noah chose to avoid it, then his companions would turn into the dust of history along with the Heavenly Wolf Island. In other words, I have to go all out, right? The expression in Noah's eyes changed. Finally, he took a deep breath, raised his head, and calmly looked at Iconaroglia, who was gathering terrifying magic power. Then let's see how far I can go now. After saying that, the fantasy greatsword, Demon's Fall Bamang, in Noah's hand turned into a burst of light particles and returned to the treasury. Then, a golden ripple fluctuated around Noah's body. Inside, a precious artifact slowly emerged. It was a sword. The body of the sword was cylindrical. The cylindrical body of the sword was black and covered with red veined patterns. The sword hilt was golden, and the sword guard was also golden. However, it looked like 3 pieces of silkworm cocoon-like objects that overlapped each other and spread out on the left side. It was a strange sword covered with strange patterns. If possible, I really don't want to use this precious artifact. The effect of this sword really disgusts me. A burst of flame-like magic power rose sharply from Noah's body. A sword that can cut open the world. Even if it's just a negligible cut that will quickly recover, it will still cause harm to the world. I don't want to use it at all. After saying that, Noah looked at Iconaroglia with eyes that flickered with an astonishing expression. However, if I can use it to protect my most important family and companions, I believe that the world will forgive me, right? The astonishing magic power that rose sharply from Noah's body converged on the strange sword in his hand. In the next instant, in Noah's hand, the strange cylindrical blade of the sword suddenly started to spin. Wang! The surrounding space suddenly fluctuated, and a terrifying red stream of air burst out from the cylindrical blade that suddenly spun, turning into an extreme wind pressure that quickly rolled up. Wang Wang! At the same time that the powerful wind pressure violently surged, the space around Noah suddenly distorted, causing the space to tremble uncontrollably. That red wind pressure engulfed the horizon, bringing along terrifying magic power fluctuations. While continuously distorting the space, it repeatedly surged toward the strange sword. If it was said that the wind pressure converging on Iconaroglia's mouth represented destruction, then the wind pressure converging on the sword in Noah's hand represented breaking. Under such circumstances, in the sky above Heavenly Wolf Island, 2 extremely violent wind pressures, one black and one red, frantically swirled in the sky, causing the sea to surge as if it had encountered a storm. At a certain moment, the entire fluctuating heaven and earth suddenly became still. Roar! In the sky, Iconaroglia suddenly roared, and the terrifying energy converging in its huge mouth turned into a violent tornado-like jet of light that descended from the sky, enveloping the area below. Enuma Elish, the star of heaven and earth divergence. Almost at the same time, Noah fiercely stabbed out with the parting sword in his hand, causing the space to tremble, causing a red violent wind pressure to violently shoot out. Suddenly, wherever the red wind pressure passed, the space seemed to be forcibly cut apart, plowing out a jagged pitch-black fault. As for the light beam that fell from the sky, it fiercely collided with the terrifying wind pressure that was coming towards it. Boom! Under a terrifying loud sound that was enough to shatter one's eardrums, the 2 attacks collided in the sky above Heavenly Wolf Island, creating an unprecedentedly frightening impact. Energy ripples that caused one's scalp to turn numb spread out in all directions. The exceptionally violent impact pervaded the sky, causing the sea below to violently tremble as if boiling, forming monstrous waves that surged in all directions. As for the epicenter of the impact, it had already ignited a dazzling light that sprinkled down from the sky. The dazzling light covered Iconaroglia. The dazzling light covered Noah. In the blink of an eye, the dazzling light once again covered the entire Heavenly Wolf Island below, enveloping the heavens and the earth. Roar! After an unknown period of time, in the dazzling light, Iconaroglia let out the most painful howls as it flew out, flying into the distance. Upon closer inspection, nearly half of the scales on the body of Iconaroglia, which was gradually flying away, had been completely shattered. Scars from the terrifying wind pressure could be seen everywhere, causing dark red blood to unceasingly seep out, dripping down like rain. As for Heavenly Wolf Island, it had completely disappeared in the dazzling light, including Noah. Chapter 1148. Wake! Wake up! Quickly wake up! In a daze, Noah seemed to hear a very pleasant voice calling out to him, causing him to frown slightly. Wake up! Quickly wake up! That very pleasant voice kept echoing in Noah's ears, without a trace of impatience, but with a slight hint of anger. Frankly speaking, this voice really made Noah feel at ease, making him involuntarily want to continue sleeping. But at this time, when his consciousness had somewhat recovered, Noah felt a piercing pain in his body. Feeling the piercing pain coming from his body, no matter how comfortable the voice calling out to him was, Noah couldn't continue sleeping. Immediately, Noah used all his strength to whip his mind, slowly awakening his consciousness and opening his eyes. And when he opened his eyes, Noah heard a somewhat happy and pleasant voice. "Oh, you finally woke up?" It was this voice that had been calling out to Noah. With a half-awake consciousness, Noah turned his head with difficulty and looked at the source of the voice. That voice was right beside Noah. Came from a young girl. She looked to be around 13 or 14 years old, was very cute, had a pair of dark green eyes, and a pair of winged ornaments on her head. Her hair was the most dazzling golden color, very curly and very long. She was wearing a cloak, but her feet were bare on the ground. This extremely cute young girl squatted beside Noah, looked at Noah's face, tilted her head, and revealed a happy smile. "I thought you really wouldn't wake up, inconceivable young man." Inconceivable young man. Until now, there was only one person who would call Noah this way. Mavis Viamilio. She was the first president of the fairy tale, the one who once passed on the 3 major spells of the fairy tale to Noah. She was the one who once held the world fragment, the one who was once the first president of the fairy tale. First generation. Noah looked at Mavis in a daze. "Why are you here? What? Have you forgotten?" Mavis said very patiently. "You even forgot what happened before you lost consciousness?" "What happened before I lost consciousness?" Noah frowned, and it was at that moment that Noah realized it. In his hand he was tightly holding a strange sword. Impressively, it was the obedient parting sword, Seeing the obedient parting sword, in his hand, Noah finally remembered. Akunurloya, the black dragon that existed in the Revelation. With its own strength to destroy a huge country. This black dragon's attack on the heavenly wolf island. Before Noah lost his consciousness at the very end. Of course, although it was said to be a fight to the death, Noah still hid the power of a god called authority. Originally, Noah was thinking that if even the obedient parting sword was unable to defeat Akunurloya's full strength attack, then he would disregard everything and use authority to destroy Akunurloya. That way, even if this world was destroyed because he used authority before a month had passed, Noah could once again repair it and return everything to its original state. Otherwise, if he was too apprehensive about this world and caused the death of his family, friends, and loved ones in fairy tale, Noah would definitely not forgive himself. But just as Noah was about to use the obedient parting sword to fight Akunurloya to the death, he did not expect that Noah's noble artifact in Akunurloya's roar would cause a huge energy collision. When the dazzling light sprinkled down from the sky, Noah knew it. If he did not block it, the heavenly wolf island would definitely not be spared. At that moment on the heavenly wolf island, another ray of light suddenly appeared, covering the entire heavenly wolf island, including Noah. Then there was no more then. After that, Noah lost consciousness. The reason why he lost consciousness was probably because of Mavis. "You really surprised me." Mavis blinked her cute pair of big eyes, her face more or less showing some surprise. "Who would have thought that in the fairy sphere, you were actually not affected by the time freeze?" Hearing Mavis' words, Noah was startled at first, but soon after he realized. Around him there was a transparent barrier like a protective cover covering the entire heavenly wolf island. Under the cover of this transparent barrier, everything on the heavenly wolf island fell into a state of stillness. The wind could not blow. The trees could not sway. The air could not move. The monsters could not move. As if the entire world had been frozen, everything on the heavenly wolf island fell into a state of stillness. The only people who could still move were 2 people. One was Noah. The other was Mavis. Such a strange phenomenon happened to confirm the authenticity of Mavis' words. Time freeze. Fairy sphere. It was able to condense the thoughts of the guild members into powerful magic, creating an invincible protective sphere, protecting all the members and even the environment. It was even able to freeze the time within the protective sphere. Now Noah was in this world that was frozen in time by the absolute defense spell. Seeing this, how could Noah not understand? At the very end, Mavis gathered the thoughts of all the guild members on Heavenly Wolf Island and cast the absolute defense spell Fairy Sphere, protecting the members of the Heavenly Wolf Island and the guild members, preventing them from suffering a calamity. The reason why Noah had suddenly lost consciousness was because Mavis had forcibly pulled him into this world where even time was frozen. Now that he had regained consciousness, it was only because Noah had a curse resistance physique that he was able to repel the time freeze of the Fairy Sphere. Mavis seemed to have seen through it as she tilted her head with a curious expression. You seem to have some kind of physique that can nullify the power of magic. What an inconceivable physique, as expected of an inconceivable youth. Upon hearing that, Noah could only laugh bitterly before he hurriedly inquired. First generation, where are my companions? Don't worry, they are also fine. Mavis comforted him. It's just that they're all stuck in the frozen time of the Fairy Sphere, so they can't move around like you. They have to wait until the Fairy Sphere is removed. Is that so? Noah let out a sigh of relief. That's good. However, after hearing Noah's words, Mavis shook her head instead. No, I can't say that it's completely good. Noah was stunned. What do you mean? It's exactly what it means, Mavis said. Right now, I have no way to remove the Fairy Sphere. Therefore, for a short period of time, the members of the guild will have to remain in a state of deep sleep. You can't remove the Fairy Sphere? Noah hurriedly asked. Why? The reason is very simple. This time, it was Mavis' turn to bitterly laugh. Because I'm just a specter. I don't have any magic power. Being able to activate the Fairy Sphere was only possible by condensing everyone's thoughts into magic power. But if I want to dispel it, it's very difficult for me to do it all at once without magic power. I can only do it slowly. Slowly? Noah frowned. How slowly? I can't be sure. Mavis's eyes flashed with wisdom. However, if my calculations are not wrong, it would take me at least 7 years to remove it. 7 years? Noah was stunned. That long? There's no other way. Mavis smiled cutely. Who asked me to be a spirit? Mavis's smiling face was so adorable that it could kill. However, Noah could not bring himself to smile. Chapter 1149. 7 years. It would take 7 years to dispel the power of the Fairy Sphere and release the sorcerers of fairy tale from this world. Perhaps it was just an instant for the companions trapped in this world where time was frozen. But for the outside world it was 7 years. Don't forget that apart from the people on Celestial Wolf Island, there were still many members in Magnolia's fairy tale, waiting for their return. Making them wait for the people on Celestial Wolf Island for 7 years? Thinking about it, Noah felt uncomfortable. Not to mention the members of Fairy Tale who came to Celestial Wolf Island were all the top fighters in the guild. If they were to lose the elites of the guild for 7 years, then Fairy Tale's title as the #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom would become undeserved. At that time, the outsiders who had their eyes on this title and their companions who wanted to protect this title would make the entire Fairy Tale live a life of grievance and hardship. Noah only needed to think about it for a moment to feel restless. Do we have to spend 7 years to dispel it? Thus Noah couldn't help but ask. Can't I break it? Break? Mavis' eyes couldn't help but blink as she looked at Noah with an even more incredulous expression. That was true. If it couldn't be dispelled normally, then it would be fine to use violence to break it. But first he had to figure out what kind of magic the Fairy Sphere was. It was a magic with absolute defense. Even if it was an X-grade noble artifact or an era-ending attack, it could completely block the attack of Iconaroglia. This kind of magic that could even freeze time, how could he use violence to break it? However, regarding breaking the Fairy Sphere, Noah wasn't just casually talking about it. Noah's authority wouldn't be affected by the time freeze. As long as Noah stayed in this world for a month and let the world adapt to his power, then even if he could freeze time, Noah's authority could still be used. As long as he could use his authority, Noah had absolute confidence in breaking the Fairy Sphere. After all, the current Noah could use the power of 2 avatars at the same time. Noah didn't believe that he couldn't break the Fairy Sphere with the power to fight against the infinite dragon god Orpheus. Moreover, although the Fairy Sphere could block an X-grade noble artifact in Iconaroglia's power, it might not be able to block Noah's authority. It must be known that the difference in power between a deicide who used his authority and a deicide who did not was like the difference between heaven and earth. Now, Noah could say with certainty that Aconaraglia's power was comparable to the 5 Dragon Kings in Demon High School, but it still couldn't reach the level of a sky dragon. Unless Aconaraglia still hid its power at the end, then it would be a different story. Noah, on the other hand, was able to rely on the numerous treasures in the Gate of Babylon to fight against Aconaralia without using his authority. Both sides were almost defeated and injured. If he used his authority, just the power of one avatar could match the level of a sky dragon. Not to mention 2 avatars. If he compared it with the rankings in Demon High School, it would be clear at a glance. According to Noah's knowledge among the 5 Dragon Kings, the weakest could only be ranked in the top 100, while the strongest could be ranked in the top 20, and the sky dragon could be ranked in the top 10. As the god of the dragon race, Orpheus, who had unlimited power, was ranked first. But if Orpheus wanted to kill a sky dragon, it could be done in minutes. As for the sky dragon, if he wanted to deal with a dragon king, even if it was a dragon king ranked in the top 20, it would only take a little effort. If Noah went all out and directly used the power of 2 avatars, then wanting to break the fairy sphere, would it be an extravagant hope? Of course not. This was something that could be done. Perhaps seeing Noah's certainty from his expression, Mavis felt that it was inconceivable, but at the same time she also sighed. If you can do it, then it's not impossible, but I don't recommend you to do so. Noah looked at Mavis dumbfoundedly, silently seeking an explanation. Think about it carefully. Mavis reminded. The absolute defense spell, Fairy Sphere, is cast using the magic power condensed from the thoughts of the guild members. If you use such a violent method to break it, then wouldn't it affect the minds of the guild members? What? Noah was shocked. This spell has such a hidden danger? I don't know, but I can say that it is possible, Mavis said bluntly. After all, in the past, the fairy sphere has never been broken, and I don't know if it will cause such an effect. It is because of this that I didn't teach the fairy sphere to anyone other than you, causing it to not be passed down in fairy tale. Noah was speechless. However, Mavis' considerations did exist. Otherwise, as a super spell that could protect everything, there was no spell more suitable than the fairy sphere to be passed down by the guild leaders of fairy tale. As the guild leader, the reason why Makarov inherited one of the 3 major spells of the fairy tale was the fairy law, and not the fairy sphere, was probably because Mavis had such a thought in mind. Moreover, this is a spell that requires such a long time to dispel. Unless it is absolutely necessary, it cannot be used. If it could be used casually, then I wouldn't have to worry about fairy tale not being able to protect myself. Mavis shook her head. Therefore, I feel that it is better to use the proper method to dispel the fairy sphere. Hearing this, Noah felt somewhat powerless. Then wouldn't there be no solution? Could it be that he really had to wait for 7 years? Then what would happen to his companions outside? Why don't you trust your companions a little? Mavis seemed to have seen through Noah's worries and smiled faintly. They're also magic shooters from fairy tale, so they'll definitely be fine. Mavis' words slightly dispelled some of the gloominess in Noah's heart. She was right. As the magic shooters of fairy tale, they would definitely have no problem with it. Moreover, Noah had made a lot of preparations before coming to Heavenly Wolf Island because of his uneasy state of mind. Now, it seemed that those preparations were not in vain. If he were to rely on those, even if it was not enough, fairy tale would be able to hold on. At the very least, it should be able to hold on for 7 years without a problem. Just as Noah was immersed in his thoughts, Mavis suddenly moved her incomparably cute face closer to Noah's and suddenly smiled. Undoubtedly, you are also trapped here and you are not frozen. You will have to live here alone for 7 years. Aren't you worried about yourself? Hearing this, Noah was silent. Live here for 7 years? That would not do. Although it was somewhat unfair to his companions, rather than wasting 7 years here, Noah would rather spend his time in another world. Perhaps that way, he could find a way to release his companions in advance. Chapter 1150. After that, Mavis expressed that as a specter, she was not like Noah who was trapped on Skywolf Island by the fairy sphere. Furthermore, because she could not do anything violent to the fairy sphere, she could only obediently choose to be trapped. As a specter, Mavis advocated for freedom. Therefore, under Noah's dumbfounded gaze, Mavis was like a cute little fairy, or like a mirage, smiling as she passed through the barrier of the fairy sphere. When she arrived outside Skywolf Island, she began the work of removing the fairy sphere. Regarding this, Noah could only express his envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, there was nothing he could do, and he could only resentfully hide in the depths of Skywolf Island. After visiting every corner of Skywolf Island to take a look at his companions who had been frozen and sealed, and after confirming that nothing had happened to them, Noah relaxed and chose to return to the world space. Alim in the pure white world as usual. All the worlds in the form of feathers welcomed Noah as they fluttered around him like happy little birds. Looking at the feathers that danced around him, Noah could not help but recall what Gaia and Aleia had said in the past. Gaia and Aleia had said that although the worlds could not directly help Noah, other than that, the worlds would not refuse Noah's request. For example, if Noah wanted to choose a timeline to descend into a world, it was completely possible. However, no matter what choice Noah made when he left a world and re-entered it, a month would have passed in that world. When choosing a timeline, there would be a gap of 1 month. When he first descended into a world, if he wanted to use authority to not affect the world, he would need a month. This 1-month time limit was probably the world's fixed adaptation time for Noah, an outsider, to enter. However, the latter was a restriction that would only appear when there was a huge disturbance in the world space. Does that mean that the 1-month gap in the previous timeline was also created after the previous turbulence in the world between worlds? Every time the world space fell into a huge disturbance, the world would have a restriction because of it? Was there such a possibility? Such a thought only flashed through Noah's mind for a moment. After all, no matter how much he thought, Noah could not think of an answer. Who told Noah to have so little understanding of the world space, and Gaia and Aleia did not tell him? With so little information, Noah could not think of an answer no matter how much he thought. Of course, the reason why Noah thought of this was because he remembered that the worlds would not refuse his request. If possible, Noah really wanted to propose to the world that he be teleported out of the fairy sphere's heavenly wolf island and return to the fairy tale, so that he could take care of everything before doing anything else. Unfortunately, that was not realistic, because that was already equivalent to a disguised form of direct help. Think about it, if Noah could casually change the location of his descent in a world, then wouldn't it be fine if the world directly teleported him to the location of the world fragment? Thinking about it again, if Noah was in battle, could he also request the world to change his location according to his will? If that was the case, Noah only needed to continuously request the world to teleport him to the back of the enemy, and then use a fatal blow. How advantageous would that be? Therefore, this kind of direct help was not possible. Looks like there is no other way. I can only obediently endure these 7 years. Noah stared at the feather that represented the fairy tale world and muttered, "Why don't I let the world send me 7 years later?" This was feasible. However, even if he did this, the 7 years in this world would still pass, and only Noah would be spared. In that case, it would be meaningless. Forget it. Noah sighed. It's still the same as what the first generation said. I should trust the other companions in the guild a little. With the preparations I made, at least I can ensure that nothing big will happen to the fairy tale. That should be enough. Thinking about this, Noah also began to think about what to do next. He was considering whether to return to the world of the fairy messenger's sword dance. In that world, Noah already knew the whereabouts of the world fragment. Therefore, instead of aimlessly looking for the world fragment in other worlds, of course it would be easier to retrieve the world fragment that he knew the whereabouts of. However, Noah still did not know how to safely retrieve the world fragment from Lotus without affecting her. Moreover, the Dark Fairy King's power in Lotus was only obediently used because of the existence of the world fragment. If the world fragment was taken out from Lotus's body, the strongest sword dancer might really be devoured by the power of the Dark Elf King and turn into pure resentment. Therefore, before finding a solution to Lotus's problem, even if he returned to the world of the fairy messenger's sword dance, it would be useless. As expected, I still have to go to other worlds first? With this thought in mind, Noah was just about to randomly find a world to enter and continue his journey when a voice sounded in Noah's mind. "Little Noah, can you hear me?" The sudden voice made Noah slightly startled, and then his eyes lit up. "Gaia! What's wrong? Little Noah? Do you miss your mother?" Gaia's voice continued to echo in Noah's mind with a hint of laughter. Then you can come to our world and sit for a while. Mother will love you dearly. Hearing this, Gaia's lowly face automatically appeared in Noah's mind. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he helplessly said, "Why are you looking for me?" Little Noah, changing the topic is wrong. Gaia's voice became dissatisfied. At least you should call me mother. Come call me mother. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched, and he didn't know what to say. Call a lowly mother? Sorry. Noah really couldn't do it. If there really was such a mother who looked like a young girl, then Noah would definitely strangle his ghost father to death in the first place. At this time, Alea's voice also sounded in Noah's mind. Actually, we have something that we want you to help us with. What's the matter? Noah pulled himself together. Since you came to find me, then it should be something related to the world, right? Did something happen in your world? No, it's not our world that's in trouble, but another world. To be more precise, it should be two worlds. Alea said straightforwardly. Since the last time Between Worlds fell into turmoil, each world more or less had some effect. The most direct effect is that you can't use your power freely. And recently we found that two worlds suddenly connected. Gaia continued Alea's words. A part of one of the worlds was transferred to the other world. What? Noah frowned. Is there a problem? There is a slight problem, Gaia said. The part that was transferred seems to be a game's data, but the data completely materialized because of the connection between the worlds. And among them, a player's spirit and soul was also transferred along with his character. Alea said lightly. In order to prevent more serious problems from arising from the connection between the two worlds, we borrowed the power of the two worlds to intercept the player's spirit and soul through the world barrier. However, we can't do anything about the materialized part of the game. In other words, Noah said with uncertainty, "You want me to go to the other world to take a look?" That's right, Gaia and Alea said at the same time. And it's by replacing that player's position. Chapter 1151. Every time he arrived in a new world, Noah felt different. Sometimes it was like sitting on an invisible train moving along with the train. Sometimes it was like sitting in an elevator. Sometimes it was like being thrown in by an invisible hand. Sometimes it was like being suspended in midair without any force. This time, Noah felt like jumping into a bottomless sea. Although he could continue to breathe, his whole body kept sinking. It was not until the feeling of standing on solid ground came that Noah felt it. He seemed to be sitting on an ice-cold chair. Immediately, Noah slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, a face appeared in Noah's vision. As if intending to stick to Noah's face, the face was very close. Suddenly, Noah shivered and quickly raised his head, pulling a distance away from the face. The owner of the face seemed to be shocked by Noah's overly intense reaction and quickly pulled a distance away, half kneeling on the ground as if flattered. "I'm very sorry, Sir Noah, did I scare you?" This was a very pleasant voice. Until hearing this voice, Noah more or less reacted and saw the full appearance of the owner of the voice. It was a young girl. A very beautiful young girl. It was as if she had walked out of a dream and accidentally stumbled into the real world. That level of beauty. Looking at this beautiful young girl half kneeling on the ground, a piece of information that did not belong to him flashed in Noah's mind, and then he showed a look of understanding. There was no doubt that before this, Noah had never even seen this beautiful young girl in front of him, let alone do anything that could make such a beautiful young girl call him sir and perform such a subordinate's etiquette. However, a piece of information that did not belong to him flashed in Noah's mind, but it made Noah understand everything at once, including the name of this beautiful young girl in front of him. So Noah spoke without hesitation. Yerbet. Yes, Sir Noah. The beautiful young girl, who was called Yerbet by Noah, raised her head, with an expression that seemed to be flattered and extremely happy, and smiled at Noah. "Excuse me, do you have any orders?" Noah didn't say anything. Instead, he looked around and saw the situation around him. This was a very vast and tall room. The position of the ceiling was quite high. The walls were white, and the interior was also decorated with gold and other colors of decorations. Undoubtedly, the whole room had a dim feeling, but it was so bright that it was like the deepest part of the castle where the Demon King lived. The style was quite high. On the ceiling, the crystal lamp made of colorful gems emitted a dazzling dreamy light. There were huge flags painted with different patterns on the walls. The floor was covered with a luxurious red carpet that connected the door to the deepest part of the room. And at the end of this luxurious red carpet, there was a flight of stairs with more than 10 steps. At the top of the stairs there was a huge crystal cut, and the back of the chair was so high that it connected to the ceiling. It looked very luxurious. At this moment, Noah was sitting on this incomparably luxurious throne. This kind of room, not to mention a hall, it was luxurious enough to be used as a king's hall in a kingdom's palace. And this was indeed a place that was equivalent to a king's hall in a kingdom's palace. Throne Hall. Located in the deepest part of the tomb called Nasarek. In other words, the place where Noah was now was a base in the tomb called Nasarek. Gaia and Alea had said that two of the worlds in the world between worlds were connected due to the previous turbulence. It caused a portion of the game data in one of the worlds to materialize and be transferred to the other world. In order to prevent the two worlds from unimaginably affecting each other, Gaia and Alea, who had been observing the situation in between the worlds, passed through the world barrier with difficulty and used the power of the two worlds to intercept the game data. However, Gaia and Alea did not have the suppressive force of the two worlds. Intercepting the player whose spirit and soul were accidentally transferred to the other world was already the limit. There was no way to stop the rest of the game data from materializing and transferring. Therefore, in order to prevent the two worlds from seriously affecting each other, Gaia and Alea asked Noah to replace the player's position and follow the materialized game data into this world. Before entering this world, Gaia and Alea had imparted the knowledge of the materialized game data to Noah. Therefore, although Noah didn't know anything about this world, he was quite familiar with the part of the game data that was transferred to this world and materialized. Based on the knowledge imparted by Gaia and Alea, Noah had a general understanding of what kind of existence this tomb called Nasarek was. Simply put, the great underground tomb of Nasarek was just a guild stronghold in a game. Everything in this stronghold was designed by the guild players in the game. This included everyone in the stronghold. Yerbade was an NPC in the great underground tomb of Nasarek. When the great tomb of Nasarek was materialized in this world, the girl who was originally just an NPC seemed to have been given a real personality and soul. She came back to life. Therefore, Noah curiously sized up Yerbade. It had to be said that Yerbade was truly a peerless beauty. She had a gentle smile on her face. She wore a pure white dress that complemented her beautiful black waist-length hair. Her pair of golden irises and vertical oval pupils looked a bit strange, but it did not diminish her beauty. Instead, it made people feel that she was exceptionally beautiful. However, on this peerless beauty's head, there were two curly horns like that of a goat. Not only that, but on her waist there was also a pair of black wings. She looked like a fallen angel but also like a pure demon. It was a contradiction to the extreme. However, it was this contradiction that made Yerbade possess a beauty that others would be infatuated with. It was likely that such a girl could only be casually created in a game. In reality, it was very unlikely that such a girl would appear. Under such circumstances, Noah stood up with a bit of curiosity. He walked around Yerbade while clicking his tongue in wonder, as if he was appreciating something. She really is quite beautiful. It's a waste to stay in such a place that doesn't see the light of day. From the name Great Underground Tomb of Nasarek, one could roughly guess what kind of place it was. It was made up of a total of 10 underground spaces, which were divided into 10 floors. The first, second, and third floors were tombs. The fourth floor was an underground lake. The fifth floor was an ice river. The sixth floor was a jungle. The seventh floor was magma. The eighth floor was a wilderness. The ninth floor was a chalk castle. The 10th floor was the throne room. And these 10 floors were all underground. As for the area above ground, it was just a relatively large tomb. For such a beautiful girl like Yerbade to stay in such a place that didn't see the light of day, especially in the deepest 10 floors, it was truly a waste. These words from the bottom of his heart made Yerbade look like a girl in love who had been praised by her sweetheart. A deep blush appeared on her face as she looked at Noah with a gaze filled with love. To be able to receive the praise of the Almighty Sovereign, even if I were to die right now, I would not have any regrets. Noah's expression completely froze, especially when he saw the extremely deep love and infatuation in Yerbade's eyes. All of the appreciation in Noah's heart disappeared and was replaced by a deep sense of speechlessness. He was completely speechless. What was the person who designed Yerbade thinking? Chapter 1152. In between worlds, using the two worlds that were connected to each other, part of the game's data was transferred from one world to the other. Part of the game's data was also instantiated, which was the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric. To be more precise, it should be said that all the people, things, and objects in the Great Tomb of Nasaric had been materialized and moved into this world. Originally, there should have been a player who was transferred into this world along with the instantiated data. A player from the guild that created the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric as their stronghold. Of course, as the creator of the Great Underground Graveyard, this player was the absolute ruler, and creator of the Great Underground Graveyard. He was an existence that couldn't be disobeyed. Gaia and Alea had intercepted this player's soul, and allowed Noah to replace this player's position, and enter this world with the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric. This did not mean that Noah had become this player, but rather that he had replaced this player's position. Whatever position this player had in the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric, Noah's current position was the same. Whatever treatment this player had in the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric, Noah's current position was the same. Naturally, whatever the people in the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric treated this player, they would treat Noah the same way. In other words, these NPCs had replaced the player's name with Noah's. As such, Noah was not surprised that Yerbade treated him like a subject. As one of the NPCs in the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric, it was not strange that Yerbade was set to be loyal to the ruler, and creator of the Great Underground Tomb of Nasaric. Now that the player's name had been replaced with Noah's, it was natural that Yerbade's loyalty had also been changed to Noah. However, Yerbade's current performance left Noah speechless. Judging from the intense love and infatuation in his eyes, it was obvious that Yerbade's favorable impression of Noah was off the charts. What did this mean? It meant that before this, the player had set Yerbade to love him. As such, Noah, who had replaced this player's position, became Yerbade's love interest. Just how perverted must one be to set an NPC in the game to love oneself? Could it be that I'm not popular with girls in real life? Under Yerbade's passionate gaze, Noah felt extremely unnatural. Wasn't this development a bit too fast? However, Noah's heart immediately calmed down. This was because before coming to this world, Noah had asked Gaia and Alea, what if the existence of the great tombs in Nasaric would affect the world so much that it would affect the world itself? What should they do? At that time, Gaia and Alea only gave Noah one answer. Obliterate. Existences that could affect the world. Worlds were existences. This was the method of Gaia and Alea, the existence known as restraining power. Of course, Noah was not suppressing powers. He was not Gaia or Alea, so he would not go to such extremes. However, Noah did not want the world to be affected. Therefore, Noah could only decide what to do after he had a better understanding of the tomb in Nasaric. Regarding this, Gaia and Alea expressed their understanding. However, they also told Noah that if he found it too troublesome, he could simply wipe out the entire underground tomb of Nasaric. This proved that these two suppressive thoughts would not change according to Noah's personality. However, there was no doubt that the future of the great tomb in Nasaric depended entirely on Noah. Even if Yerbade loved Noah, Noah could not guarantee that he would let her go just because of this. With that in mind, Noah felt that it was necessary for him to meet the main figures in the great tomb of Nasaric. Immediately, Noah spoke to Yerbade in a calm tone. Yerbade, tomorrow at this time, have the floor protectors come and see me. In Fairy Tale, Noah was groomed to be the next guild leader of the guild. In the Black Bullet, Noah was also the guild leader of Fairy Tale, which had taken in the cursed child. In addition, in the world of the Godslayer, Noah had been active as a king, so when he gave orders, there was no longer any unfamiliarity. That calm tone made Yerbade, who was looking at Noah with an infatuated expression, tremble. It was as if she had been woken up from a dream, and she could not help but lower her head. Yes, Lord Noah. Noah nodded, turned around and walked toward the door. Yerbade, who watched Noah leave, once again showed an infatuated expression. She stroked her cheek with one hand and looked intoxicated. As expected of our Supreme Master. This kind of natural pressure can only be possessed by a true king and ruler. After walking out of the throne room on the 10th floor, Noah came to the 9th floor. It looked like a chalk castle, full of a solemn atmosphere. However, upon closer inspection, it looked more like the corridor of a super high-end hotel. On the ceiling there was a gorgeous crystal lamp hanging at a certain distance. The vast road was paved with polished floors, reflecting the light from the crystal lamp. It was very luxurious. There is not a single person in such a big place, and it is underground. Just thinking about it makes me feel a little gloomy. That was the only thing Noah could say. But there was nothing he could do about it. In the tomb of Nasarek, all the NPCs were not humans but aliens. For example, skeletons, zombies, vampires, demons, and even slimes were all aliens. In other words, this was not only an underground tomb, but the characters that lived here were all existences that fit the word tomb. In the entire tomb of Nasarek, Noah was probably the only human. Just as Noah was thinking this, a scene that surprised Noah appeared. Tap, 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 tap. Following a series of light and orderly footsteps, a group of people lined up in an orderly manner and slowly walked toward Noah. That's right. People. Although he did not know what race they were, at least in terms of appearance, this group of people did indeed have a human-like appearance. The first person that came into Noah's sight was an old man wearing a formal butler's uniform. The old man's hair was all white, and he had a long beard. His back was very straight, and there were obvious wrinkles on his face. However, his eyes were as sharp as an eagle hunting its prey. This told others that this butler was definitely not an ordinary old man. Behind the old butler, there were 6 female servants. The 6 maids were wearing metal gauntlets and knee pads of different colors, such as gold, silver, and black. They were also wearing armor designed in the shape of maid outfits. They were not wearing helmets but white headdresses. Some of these female servants had their hair tied into a bun, some had ponytails, some had long straight hair, some had braids, and some had curly hair. Their hair color was also completely different. However, almost all of these maids were beauties. Looking at the armor that these female servants were wearing, it was clear that their true purpose was not to clean and serve, but to defend against enemies. Moreover, judging from the pressure emitted from these 7 people, they were all experts with extraordinary combat strength. Such a group of experts with extraordinary battle prowess knelt down on one knee when they arrived in front of Noah. Lord Noah. Looking at the butler and female servants kneeling in front of him, Noah instantly found their information in his mind. The butler in the lead was called Sebastian, and he was indeed the butler of Nazarek's underground tomb. The 6 female servants were combat maids named Pleiades, and they directly belonged to Sebastian. In other words, as the current master of Nazarek's underground tomb, Noah was the person they needed to serve. You came at the right time, Noah said directly. Leave one person to take me to the room. The rest of you can do what you need to do. Yes. Chapter 1153. In fact, in the Nasarek underground tomb, only the B9 and B10 floors were occupied by the players of the guild that created this stronghold in the game. The other 8 floors were all used to defend against external enemies. The B10 floor was a place where no one would go if there was nothing going on. Naturally, the B9 floor became the place where the players of this guild went in and out the most frequently. Because of this reason, in the Nasarek underground tomb, the other floors were not suitable for people to live in. Only the B9 floor was designed to imitate a royal suite. It was very luxurious. Noah's room in the Nasarek underground tomb was such a luxurious suite. Not only did it have a huge bathroom, but it also had a bar. There was a piano in the living room. There was a master bedroom, guest room, kitchen, clothing room, and countless other rooms. It was more than enough to be a villa. The door to such a luxurious room was pushed open by a young girl in a maid uniform. After pushing open the door, the girl respectfully bowed in the direction of the door. We're here, Lord Noah. Hearing this, Noah walked in from the door. While looking at the unbelievably luxurious room, he glanced at the girl who led the way. It was a beautiful girl with black hair and black eyes. Her hair and pupils were the same color as Noah's. Although the girl's dark eyes had the same color as Noah's eyes, her pupils were not as deep as Noah's. Instead, they were like obsidian shining brightly. If Noah's eyes were compared to the starry sky, then the girl's eyes were gemstones. In addition, the girl's beautiful black hair was tied into a ponytail. Her skin was unusually white. Undoubtedly, she was a maid, but she had an elegant temperament. Coupled with her exotic beauty, she was more than enough to be a young lady. No one would believe that such a beautiful girl would be a maid. Of course, strictly speaking, a maid's job was only a small part of the girl's job. The girl's real role was to fight. One of the battle maids of the Pleiades star cluster that belonged directly to Sebastian, Annabelle. After that, the young girl was responsible for leading Noah. Therefore, Noah spoke almost reflexively. "Thank you, Annabelle." However, when she heard these words, Annabelle was suddenly shocked and hurriedly knelt down on one knee. "Please don't say that, Lord Noah. You are the supreme of the great underground tomb of Nasaric. As a battle maid of the Pleiades star cluster, it is natural for me to serve you. There is no need for you to thank me." Noah was almost shocked by Annabelle's sudden kneeling. After he reacted, he only felt speechless. "It's just a simple thank you. Is there a need for such a big reaction?" "Without a doubt," Annabelle said without hesitation. "You are a supreme existence and we are just maids. Please take it back." Hearing Annabelle's words, Noah sighed. "If I say it myself, then I won't take it back. It has nothing to do with status. This is my code of conduct. If you can't accept it, I will be a little more careful in the future, but there is no need to take it back." After leaving this sentence, Noah left Annabelle, who was still kneeling on one knee on the ground, seemingly still unable to accept it, and walked into the room. After glancing around, Noah slightly raised the corner of his mouth and nodded with some satisfaction. "I thought since it's an underground tomb, how exaggerated would it be?" From the perspective of a room, this place that could be used as a villa was naturally exaggerated. However, this was at least a place where a person lived. Before this, Noah had been worried about what he should do if he had to sleep in a coffin and lie in a tomb. After seeing this extremely luxurious but at least a place where a person lived, Noah was relieved. Then, Noah hesitated for a while, then came to the piano in the living room and sat down. His fingers stroked the cold piano keys, recalling the songs he learned in the world of the Dark Bullet. After a while, Noah's hands moved almost by themselves, and he played flexibly. In the next second, the melodious syllables formed a beautiful melody that reverberated throughout the luxurious room. Hearing the pleasant piano sound, Annabelle, who was standing at the door, was startled at first. She looked at Noah's smiling face as he played the piano, and her eyes were full of surprise. Obviously, this combat maid didn't expect that the master she served, the ruler of the entire Nasaric underground tomb, could play the piano. However, immediately afterward, Annabelle was captivated by the pleasant piano sound. Before today, everything in the underground tomb of Nasaric, including people, was just a part of data in a game. Even the personality and character of the NPC were still set when they were still in the game. Of course, in such a world full of aliens, no one would be specially set to listen to the piano. So, there was no doubt that this was the first time Annabelle heard someone play the piano. In addition, Noah's piano playing was really good, and Annabelle was immediately overwhelmed by the pleasant melody. After an unknown amount of time, the piano piece that reverberated throughout the entire room slowly came to an end, its final note fading away. However, Annabelle was not able to get rid of Noah's piano performance in time. She still looked at Noah in a daze, which made Noah, who inadvertently glanced at the situation here, puzzled. "What's wrong?" Only then did Annabelle wake up and quickly kneel down on one knee. "I'm very sorry, since I was in a daze while serving, sir. I am willing to accept any punishment. I say, do you want to kneel down and apologize for everything?" Noah was speechless. "Am I some kind of dictator or tyrant? How can that be?" Annabelle said righteously. "You are the ruler of the great underground tomb of Nasaric. It is because of your supreme existence that there is Nasaric. How can you, who are so compassionate and wise, be a dictator and tyrant? Is it?" Noah's expression became unnatural. The heavens had mercy on Noah. He had only arrived in Nasaricli today. Before this, Noah didn't even know the name Nasaric. In such a case, how did Annabelle come to the conclusion that Noah was compassionate and wise? Could this also be part of the setting? Do the players want the NPCs to praise themselves like this? Don't they blush? In fact, as the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasaric, even without the setting, everyone here had the highest level of loyalty to the ruler of the great underground tomb of Nasaric. Therefore, not every player loved to play this game. Besides, before this, including Yair, Abed and Annabelle, everyone here was just an NPC. They couldn't even have a conversation. They were just like puppets, obeying the orders of their creators. How could they praise others like this? So Noah left such a misunderstanding. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Noah stood up from the piano, turned his gaze to Annabelle, and suddenly said so. Have you noticed the changes in the great underground tomb of Nasarek? Hearing this, Annabelle was startled. Is that so? Noah nodded slightly as if he got the answer. In other words, you don't even know that the great underground tomb of Nasarek has been moved to another world, right? Another world. Annabelle was slightly surprised. Seeing this, Noah was secretly amused by Annabelle's extremely easy to see through and said to Annabelle, in that case, Annabelle, tell Sebastian to inform Yair Abed and warn everyone not to go to the surface without permission. Do you understand? If Sebastian was the butler of the entire great underground tomb of Nasarek, then Yair Abed was the general manager. Except for Noah, he was the person with the most authority in the entire Nasarek. Such an order that needed to be obeyed by the entire Nasarek naturally had to be executed by Yair Abed himself. Yes. Annabelle lowered her head without hesitation and accepted the order. Chapter 1154. After Annabelle left, Noah slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Although I don't feel restrained, being treated so respectfully by someone I didn't know before still feels a bit strange. With this thought, Noah left the living room and walked into the inner room. After opening the inner door, a very luxurious room with a large ceiling appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Strictly speaking, this was Noah's room, a place to sleep. In the underground tomb of Nasarek, because everyone was an alien, almost no one needed to eat or sleep like a human. However, as players in the guild that created the tomb of Nasarek, those players were still humans in the real world. Therefore, the players' rooms here were built to be no different from human rooms, but they were relatively more luxurious. This was one of the things that Noah was glad about. After all, although Noah was powerful, he was still a human. He needed to sleep and eat. He just didn't know if a battle maid like Annabelle could cook. Then I'll do it myself. It's not like I don't have hands. Leaving such a sentence, Noah walked into the room. As soon as he walked into the room, Noah noticed something. On a table in the room, a ring was lying on it, blooming with ruby-like light in the dim room. That is, a message flashed in Noah's mind. Then he stepped forward and picked up the ring inlaid with rubies. This is the Ains Ul Gong ring, right? Ains Ul Gong, the guild that used the tomb of Nasarek as a stronghold and created the entire Nasarek, was called Ains Ul Gong. And this Ains Ul Gong ring was a ring owned by all the members of Ains Ul Gong. This ring was not only a symbol of identity, but also a magic tool. Its ability was very simple. It allowed the wearer to perform unlimited teleportation in the tomb of Nasarek. It could even teleport from the outside to the inside of the tomb of Nasarek. In the tomb of Nasarek, except for a few specific places, the rest of the place had magic effects similar to teleportation and teleportation. Teleportation could not be done at will. Therefore, this ring was quite convenient. Moreover, in the tomb of Nasarek, there was a treasure hall that stored all the weapons, tools, and all kinds of items that the guild members of Ains Ul Gong worked hard to obtain in the game. Only with this ring, called Ains Wul's Ring of Respect, could one enter the treasure hall. This is interesting. Noah rubbed the ring in his hand with a look of interest. Maybe I can find something in there that doesn't even have in my treasure hall? As soon as this sentence, a voice sounded in Noah's mind. Master, are you finally going to use other weapons? This voice was immature and cold. However, in this immature and cold voice, Noah was keenly aware of a trace of unhappiness. This made Noah more or less not know whether to laugh or cry. Aster, are you still concerned about the matter of Achanalia? In the battle against Achanalia, Noah used the elven device that Aster transformed into, but it could not even pierce through Achanalia's scales. Of course, that was because Achanalia was a dragon-type creature. Its scales had a great defensive effect against physical and magical attacks. But the main reason was because Noah at that time had turned the energy in the energy source into equal amounts of magic and divine power. This caused the divine power to only exert half of its power. This caused Aster's power to not be able to be fully utilized. Aster was naturally aware of this. However, this cute elven girl who liked to throw tantrums did not let it go at all. She still minded it until now. I am Master's sword. Aster's voice had a rare tinge of sadness. If I can't be used, then I can't be Master's sword. Hearing this, Noah's hand that was rubbing Ainzur's ring of respect paused for a moment. Then he wore Ainzur's ring of respect on his finger. Then he pulled out Aster, who had transformed into a small sword, from his waist and raised it in front of him. Aster, come out for a moment. As his words fell, the entire room was greeted with an indescribable silence. After a while, the small silver sword in Noah's hand blossomed with a bright light. In the light, Aster's figure slowly emerged. Like a butterfly, she gracefully landed on the ground. Her long silver hair that reached her waist hung down due to gravity. It was a beautiful sight. Then Aster raised her delicate and cute face. She opened her mysterious eyes and looked at Noah. That delicate face that did not look like a human's, but rather like an angel's or a fairy's, was as emotionless as before. However, that pair of eyes that were filled with mysteriousness had lost some of their luster compared to the past. Those who did not understand Aster would not be able to see anything. But Noah knew that this was a sign that Aster was in low spirits. Slightly bending his knees, he half-squatted in front of Aster. Noah and Aster maintained the same height. Under Aster's gaze, Noah reached out his hand and gently stroked Aster's beautiful silver hair. If I tell you that it's all my fault and not yours, you probably won't be able to lift your spirits, right? Saying this, Noah looked into Aster's eyes and said in a sincere tone, Actually, Aster, you should know that it's not that you're useless, but that I haven't been able to fully draw out your strength. Hearing this, Aster slightly raised his head and looked at Noah. Then he shook his head. That's not true. Master is already able to fully utilize me. Indeed, after this period of training, I am already able to fully utilize you. But being able to fully utilize you doesn't mean that I can fully utilize you, right? Noah said helplessly. After all, it has only been 2 to 3 months since I formed a contract with you. How could I fully draw out your strength? That's not true. Aster said seriously. Master is already very powerful to be able to draw out my strength to this extent in just 2 to 3 months. Even Master Alicia, who was previously known as the Saintess of Salvation, was unable to do so. So sooner or later I will be able to draw out all of your strength. Noah suddenly smiled. Seeing that I've worked so hard, Aster, you can't throw a tantrum here by yourself. I'm not throwing a tantrum, Aster said expressionlessly, but his tone clearly sounded like he was throwing a tantrum. This made Noah not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Noah wasn't just saying that casually. Now Noah wasn't like before when he didn't have the slightest understanding of Aster. After sharing dreams with Aster many times, Noah gradually grasped Aster's past. As the strongest sword spirit, Aster's strength was undoubtedly powerful. Not only did the contractor need to pay with his life to exchange for this strength, but he could also rely on his own strength to allow the contractor to destroy the Dark Elf King's strength. How could an ordinary spirit do that? In the past, when the elemental spirit realm was still embroiled in the Elven War, the 5 Elven Kings and the Dark Elf King were still fighting. Aster didn't belong to either faction. He relied on his own authority and acted alone. As the strongest sword spirit, Aster's strength was deeply feared by both factions. The strongest sword spirit was an existence that even the 5 Elven Kings and the Dark Elf King had to be wary of. Even the Elven Kings had to look at its true strength in a new light. How could such a powerful force be completely lured out by Noah in just 2 to 3 months? I'm still far from it, Noah lamented. When will I be able to fully use Aster? Perhaps I will even be able to slash apart the god's curse on Jerf? Chapter 1155. In the world of fairy tale, Noah had experienced many battles on Celestial Wolf Island. First, he had a battle with Laxus because of the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam. Then, because of the monsters that jumped out from time to time on Celestial Wolf Island, he fell into an almost endless battle. On top of that, they had to engage in an all-out battle with the Grimoire Heart that was attacking them. On Celestial Wolf Island, Noah had fought many battles. Of course, whether it was Laxus, Azuma, or Hades to Noah, they were not difficult opponents, not to mention the rest. Therefore, the battles with these people were actually quite easy. The most important one was the battle with the black dragon, a Conarolia. Without using his authority, Noah used all his skills in the battle with the black dragon that existed in tacit revelation. After that, Noah immediately returned to Between Worlds. Under Gaia and Alea's request, he followed Nasaric and descended into this world together. He did not rest for a second in between. This way, no matter how vigorous Noah was, once he lay on the bed, he would immediately fall asleep. Therefore, when Noah woke up, it was almost the next morning. After a comfortable sleep, Noah opened his eyes, stretched, and then lifted the blanket, intending to get up. However, just as he was about to get up, Noah felt a soft and comfortable weight in front of him, making him slightly startled. Then, as if thinking of something, he looked in front of him. "Master?" Her long silver-white hair was not messy in the slightest as it flowed down her slender back, complementing her milk-white skin. Lying on top of Noah's body, Aster seemed to be sleeping soundly. She tightly hugged Noah's neck. Her small lips were still murmuring Noah's name. That look was simply adorable to the max. "Aster, you're not wearing clothes again." Noah's expression more or less carried a trace of helplessness, but it was more of a doting feeling. Although it could not be said that he was used to it, but with Aster's appearance in front of him from time to time, Noah would not make a fuss like before. After paying attention to not look at some parts of Aster's body that he should not look at, Noah carried a doting mood and lightly stroked Aster's head. "Ugh!" Aster, in her sleep, seemed to be able to feel Noah's touch and let out a comfortable sound. Her expression became more peaceful, and she slept more soundly. Seeing Aster like this, even Noah didn't have the heart to wake up this cute elf girl. Let Aster sleep for a while. With such thoughts in mind, Noah stroked Aster's head while he was sleeping. "Moreover, I can also slightly update my ability value." After finding such an excuse for himself, Noah continued to stroke Aster's head and then closed his eyes. After converting the unlimited energy in his body into divine power, he let the divine power flow out from the divine power source and spread throughout his body. Noah's mind was immersed in the engraving on his back. A familiar light source lit up from Noah's back, bringing along complex and mysterious characters that jumped back and forth in the air, gradually changing. During this time, Noah's mind gradually received the feedback of the updated ability value, automatically appearing the information of the updated ability value. Noah Dole LV. 4 Strength, S. 966, SSS, 1757, Durability, S. 976, SSS, 1758, Dexterity, S. 970, SSS, 1755, Agility, S. 985, SSS, 1760, Magic, S. 959, SSS, 1743, Mystery, G-Magic Conductor, HG Swordsman, G-Magic Weapon Refinement Steel Making Magic Copy, Refine and Forge Weapons Copy. Refine and forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Copy, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a certain period depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords Protection Permanent Magic. Permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the contract spirit. Contract spirit as a sword spirit. Obtain the protection of the sword spirit and weaken physical attacks. The degree of weakening will be increased or decreased according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold Smelting Quick Attack Magic gradually turn the target into steel. Successful tempering will cause the target to shatter. Tempering speed will be determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills Protection from the World Permanent Skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. After the updated ability value, Noah was more or less surprised. Proficiency increased by about 4,000? Isn't this too fast? Since leaving the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, there was no longer a way to kill a large number of monsters like in the underground city to obtain enough experience points to level up. Noah had not improved by such a large margin for a long time. Moreover, compared to any of the previous times, the improvement this time could not be said to be small. Not to mention, even the development ability Magic Conductor and Swordsman had improved by a stage. It must be known that compared to the basic ability, The improvement of the development ability was more difficult because there was no proficiency. Basic ability proficiency increased by about 4,000, and 2 development abilities improved by a stage. If this were to happen in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the dungeon, this would be an impossible situation. Not to mention Noah was a LV for level 2 adventurer, and his all ability value was at the S stage. To be able to improve so much under such circumstances, it was really a bit unbelievable. However, Noah also understood the reason. The battle with Aconarolia increased my experience points by a lot. After all, Aconarolia's strength was stronger than any floor master in the underground city. A level 4 floor master like Goliath would probably be killed with a slap. Now, my physical ability should be better than Hercules in the form of a servant, right? Noah slowly opened and closed his palm, feeling the strength and feeling when he clenched his fist. Finally, he came to a conclusion. It should be more or less better, but it would be difficult to completely crush him. It was like taking 2 eggs and colliding them with each other. One of the shells was slightly harder than the other, but if they collided together, the result would be that both eggs were broken. To completely crush Hercules in the form of a servant, Noah estimated that he would have to level up to LV 5 and become a level 1 adventurer. Thinking of this, Noah was about to get up when the door was knocked. Then a voice came from outside. "Lord Noah, may I ask if you're awake?" "Annabelle." Noah, who recognized the voice, responded directly. "I'm awake. What's the matter?" "Yes," Annabelle said. "Sir Yerbade has gathered all the guardians in the throne hall according to Sir Noah's instructions." "Oh." Noah raised his eyebrows and smiled slightly. "I'll go over now." After spending about 10 minutes washing up, Noah walked out of the room, took Annabelle, and walked down to the door of the throne hall. At this time, Annabelle, who had been walking behind Noah to show Noah's leader position, took a step forward. For the first time, she passed Noah's position and came to the door. Before Noah could, she helped Noah open the door of the throne hall. Gotcha! Amidst the heavy echoes that sounded like the doors of a castle being opened, the vast royal hall was presented before Noah. Noah immediately saw it. In the throne room there were 6 people waiting here. They seemed to be discussing something. It wasn't until Noah appeared that the 6 people who were talking looked in the direction of Noah, and then they all knelt on one knee. Chapter 1156. The underground tomb of Nassarik came from a game called Yggdrasil. Since it was a game, there would naturally be levels. In Yggdrasil, regardless of whether it was the level of characters, monsters, or NPCs, the maximum level was 100. In the underground tomb of Nassarik, there were no more than 10 max-level NPCs. Most of these max-level NPCs had been given the position of guardian, and were in charge of managing 1 or more floors. In the game, these NPCs were also the bosses of each floor of the underground tomb of Nassarik, and were in charge of fighting enemies. Therefore, if Noah wanted to understand the underground tomb of Nassarik, he naturally had to start with these max-level guardians. This was the reason why he had asked Yerbade to gather all the guardians. Therefore, Noah cast his gaze on the guardians who were kneeling on one knee in the throne room, and the first thing he noticed was a girl. It was a young girl wearing a black evening gown. The dress was swollen like a cake dress. Her upper body was draped in a cardigan decorated with lace and ribbons. She also wore long lace gloves on her hands. Almost no skin was exposed. She looked to be about 14 or 15 years old and still had a childish air. Her facial features were quite regular, but her skin was abnormally pale like white wax. Her long silver-gray hair was tied to one side and hung down. She was cute and beautiful, but her chest was a little inconsistent with her age and appeared to be high and bulging. She was the guardian of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors of the underground tomb of Nassarik. Zaisha Bradfren. Next to Zaisha was an alien that emitted a cold aura. It had a huge body that was more than 2 meters tall, and its entire body was ice blue like ice. It looked like an insect that walked on 2 legs. It looked like a mantis, a grasshopper, or a fusion of the two and transformed. It had a tail that was twice as long as its height, and its entire body was covered with sharp icicle-like spikes. It also had a seemingly strong and powerful jaw. This xenomorph had 4 arms and a chilling aura emanating from its body. Its icy blue exoskeleton looked like a suit of armor. Its shoulders and back even bulged out like icebergs. It gave off a creepy feeling, but at the same time, it also gave off a majestic aura. It was the guardian of the 5th level of the great tomb of Naseric Cositus. Opposite Zacia and Cositus, there were 2 children kneeling on one knee. The 2 of them looked exactly the same. They looked to be around 10 years old, and both of them had a pair of pointy ears, slightly tanned skin, and short hair that reached their shoulders like golden silk. It was obvious at a glance that these 2 children were twins. The only difference was that one of the twins had a bright expression on his face and wore white trousers on his lower body, while the other had a weak expression and wore a white skirt on her lower body. Other than that, the rest of their body parts were almost identical. The one wearing the white trousers was the older twin, the guardian of the 6th level of the great tomb of Naseric Bellofiora. The one in the white dress was the younger of the twins, Mare Bellofiori, one of the guardians of the 6th level of the great catacombs of Naseric. It was emphasized again. The one wearing trousers and looking as cheerful as the sun was the older sister. The one wearing the skirt and looking very weak, making people want to protect her, was the younger brother. The one being boyish was the older sister. The one with the weak aura was the younger brother. Because it was very important, it was best not to forget. As for the remaining person, he was about 180 centimeters tall. His skin was tanned as if he was often exposed to the sun. He had an Asian face and his combed-back hair was quite black. He also wore a pair of round-rimmed glasses, a British-style suit, and a tie. He looked like a rather capable businessman. Behind him there was a silver metal tail. There were 6 spikes at the front of the tail, and light black flames constantly swayed around it. His entire body gave off an evil aura. He was the guardian of the 7th level of the great tomb of Naseric Demiugos. In front of these 5 people, Yerbella was like a leader. She led a group of guardians and also respectfully knelt on one knee. This was because this beautiful girl was the chief guardian of the entire great tomb of Naseric Yerbella. Apart from the guardians of the 4th and 8th levels, the guardians of the entire great tomb of Naseric with the highest status and strength all knelt on one knee in front of Noah, offering the courtesy of a subject. Annabelle, who helped Noah open the door to the throne room, stood to the side without a trace and stood at the door. It seemed that she had no intention of following Noah into the throne room. As the butler of the great tomb of Naseric, Sebastian's level was also full. As for the combat maids of the Pleiades star cluster who directly belonged to Sebastian, their levels were between 40 and 70. Whether it was strength or status, Annabelle was lower than the guardians. Therefore, this combat maid with a serious personality would never do anything that crossed the line in this situation. Noah also understood this point. Under Annabelle's gaze, he walked into the throne room. The moment Noah walked into the throne room, the chief guardian, Yerbella, lowered her head. "Greetings, Lord Noah." As soon as Yerebella's voice fell, the guardians immediately lowered their heads. "Greetings, Lord Noah." It had to be said that this show of extravagance was really full. Since this was the case, Noah would not be so tactless as to destroy the rare atmosphere that these guardians had brewed. Under the respectful welcome of the guardians, he walked up the stairs and sat on the throne. Of course, Noah did not have the intention to put on airs. His sitting posture was quite casual, even a little lazy. He supported his face with one hand and placed it on the armrest of the throne. After looking around at the guardians below, he spoke. "Didn't you say to gather all the guardians? Where are the guardians of the 4th and 8th floors?" Because the 9th and 10th floors were where the guild members of Ans Ulgong used to operate, there were no guardians on these 2 floors. If an enemy were to invade the 9th or 10th floor, they would no longer be facing the guards of the NPCs, but the guards of the entire Ans Ulgong. Therefore, only the 1st to the 8th floor had NPC guardians. Now, the guardians of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th floors, as well as the chief guardian, were all present, but the guardians of the 4th and 8th floors were not. It was no wonder that Noah had such a question. The one who answered Noah's question was Yerbella. The guardians of the 4th and 8th floors have special existences and duties, so it is not suitable for them to come here to greet you, Lord. Therefore, I acted on my own initiative and did not let the guardians of the 4th and 8th floors come. Now that Yerbait had mentioned it, Noah finally remembered. The guardian of the 4th floor was not an NPC, but a large gorm that was used for strategic sieges. It did not have self-awareness and it needed a lot of time to activate. It was also more than 30 meters tall, so it was naturally impossible to call it over in this kind of situation. The guardian of the 8th floor was even more special. Not only was its level not at the maximum level of 100, it was only level 35, and its combat strength was almost 0. It was the final line of defense for the 8th floor, which was in front of the 9th floor, where Ans Ulgong was located. It basically only had one purpose. That was to kill the enemy who had the ability to invade the 8th floor of the great underground tomb of Nasarik, and who was about to break through to the 9th floor where Ans Ulgong was located. Once it was killed, this special guardian would activate an extremely special ability. In the past, 1,200 players were completely annihilated on the 8th floor. Therefore, such a guardian who would drag everyone down with him should he die casually naturally couldn't be called over casually. I see. Noah nodded. I understand. The moment he finished speaking, Noah narrowed his eyes. Buzz. In the next moment, golden ripples continuously fluctuated around Noah, and one by one treasures shot out in the direction of the guardians. Chapter 1157. Buzz. When the sound of space trembling reverberated from the throne, the group of guardians who had their heads lowered were immediately shocked. They raised their heads almost reflexively and looked up. Then, the scene that appeared in front of everyone left every guardian in shock. They saw that around Noah, who was sitting lazily on the throne, extremely bright golden ripples fluctuated out of the space one after another. Inside, various weapons such as swords, sabers, spears, halberds, and other weapons slowly appeared. In a game called Yggdrasil, there was naturally such a thing as equipment. The guardians of the underground tomb of Nasarik, who were transferred from Yggdrasil, were shocked because of two reasons. 1. In the game, under normal circumstances, one could only equip one weapon. This was a matter of course. 2. In the game, there were also levels of equipment. According to the settings of Yggdrasil, whether it was equipment, tools, or items, starting from the lowest level, they were divided into low-level, mid-level, high-level, heritage level, relic level, legendary level, and the highest level artifact level. There were a total of 8 levels. Above the highest level artifact level, there were also a limited number of world-level tools. However, the so-called world-level tools were no longer something that could be owned by a player. Therefore, in Yggdrasil, the highest level equipment, tools, and items generally referred to the artifact level. All the guardians here were max-level NPCs. However, even so, among the guardians present, the only equipment that could be owned was the artifact level. Now, the scene that appeared in front of the guardians subverted their hearts. Under normal circumstances, one could only equip one weapon, but Noah was using more than 10 weapons at this moment. In the case where even a full-level guardian could only hold one artifact-level weapon, the weapons that Noah took out at this moment were almost all comparable to or even surpassing the brilliance of a divine artifact-level weapon. Therefore, the group of guardians only had time to be shocked. In the next second, the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons that were reflected in the brilliant golden ripples trembled and suddenly burst out, falling one by one like thunder. Boom! A loud explosion immediately shook the entire throne room, setting off an astonishing fire and shock wave that swept in all directions, causing the huge flags that were inserted into the surrounding walls to sway crazily. Ah! The group of guardians who had reached full level in Yggdrasil were blasted away by the astonishing flames and shock waves. They screamed and rolled on the ground one by one under the attack of bursting scorch. After rolling a few times, they stopped. In the throne room, the shockwaves gradually subsided, but the astonishing flames were still in the air, illuminating the entire somewhat dim space. It also told everyone present that what had just happened was real. Noah began to attack the guardians who had presented themselves to him as his subordinates. The sudden development made all the guardians who were blasted away. Not to mention the guardians, even Annabelle, who was waiting at the door, was shocked. After recovering from her shock, she quickly knelt down on one knee with a face full of panic. Not only Annabelle, but even the guardians who were blasted away got up one after another. They did not care about the traces of scorch on their bodies. They knelt down on one knee in panic and lowered their heads heavily. Please calm down. Sir Noah. Yerbade squeezed out a voice that sounded like he was about to cry. If we have done anything wrong, please punish us, Sir Noah. Zaisha, Yon, Mare, Kosets, and Dimugos also shouted loudly. Please punish us, Sir Noah. Obviously, everyone thought that they had done something wrong and angered Noah. which made Noah suddenly attack them. In this regard, Noah just stood up, walked forward slowly, and spat out indifferent words. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that I don't like you, so I blasted you away." This sentence made everyone, led by Yerbade, widen their eyes in disbelief. "Because I don't like you? Because I don't like you, so I blasted everyone away?" The guardians of the big underground tomb in Nasariq almost couldn't believe their ears. "What?" Noah said indifferently. "Do you think I'm rude and unreasonable? No. I wouldn't dare." Yerbade bit his lip, and his shoulders trembled. As a supreme sovereign, how can you be rude and unreasonable? However, Noah denied Yerbade's words. "No, this is the so-called rude and unreasonable. Moreover, there is nothing more rude and unreasonable than this." After saying this, Noah slowly raised a hand to his side. "Therefore, I have to tell you that I will be even more rude and unreasonable from now on." Blades, swords, spears, halberds, and all sorts of other treasures suddenly emerged from the golden ripples around Noah and pointed at Yerbade and the others. "Because I really don't like you, blasting you away is no longer enough to satisfy me. I'm going to kill you for real." The heavy and substantial pressure, along with Noah's ruthless and unreasonable words, pierced into the hearts of the guardians. "If you want to live, then stand up, resist, and kill me." This sentence made the hearts of all the guardians of the big underground tomb in Nasariq tremble. Their eyes were filled with intense despair. That despair was not directed at Noah. Instead, it was directed at himself. "No!" Yerbade shouted out the thoughts in the hearts of all the guardians present. "How could we possibly make a move against you, a supreme sovereign?" However, this sentence was met with a leisurely smile from Noah. "If you don't resist, then only death awaits you." Hearing this, the group of guardians actually raised their heads in unison and said in unison, "Our lives belong to Lord Noah." After saying that, the guardians lowered their heads and closed their eyes, looking as if they were willing to be beheaded. Among them, Yerbade's heart was filled with sorrow. How could this young lady not be heartbroken when her beloved master said that he did not like her to the point of wanting to kill her? The rest of them, on the other hand, had fearful yet determined looks on their faces. Even so, none of the guardians present, including Yerbade, had any grudges against Noah's brutality and cruelty. Noah looked at the group of guardians who lowered their heads obediently, looking as if they would have no regrets even if they were killed. A thoughtful look flashed across his dark, deep eyes. Noah did not really dislike these guardians to the point of wanting to kill them directly. Noah just wanted to know if these guardians would be as loyal to Noah, the owner of the underground tomb in Nasariq, no matter what the situation was. After all, no matter how accurate the settings in the game were, they could not be so accurate to the point of including people's hearts. It was like a person who was a traitor. Even if they were absolutely loyal to others, once they were disappointed or even rebellious, they would slowly walk the path of betrayal. Noah did not believe that the loyalty of these guardians in the game was off the charts, and that they would always be so loyal in the future. The human heart was complicated. It was hard to say when a guardian would become dissatisfied with being loyal to Noah and start to rebel. That was why Noah treated these guardians in the most rude and unreasonable way. If even this kind of rude and unreasonable behavior would not cause the guardians to betray him, then Noah would more or less choose to believe these people. He believed that these people would not go against his will. In that case, at least under Noah's leadership, the possibility of the underground tomb in Nasariq bringing serious effects to this world would be greatly reduced. Of course, he had to add fuel to the fire. "Is that so?" Noah said. "Then what if I tell you to kill everyone except yourself?" Chapter 11:58. Following Noah's words, the atmosphere in the throne room became so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Led by Yerabed, Zaisha, Yal, Mer, Kositz, Demugos, and Annabelle all felt their breathing stop. But immediately after, apart from Annabelle, all the guardians raised their heads and looked at each other with unswerving determination and cruelty in their eyes. Seeing this, Noah understood. These NPCs from Yggdrasil were truly blindly loyal. No matter how ruthless or unreasonable Noah's orders were, as long as they came from Noah's mouth, no matter how incomprehensible they were, they would obediently obey. Only at this moment did Noah let down his guard against the NPCs in Nasariq's tomb. This was because Gaia had told Alea that the great underground tomb in Nasariq could have a serious impact on the world. Even though the NPCs led by Yerbade had been so obedient to him yesterday, Noah was still a little wary of them. Now, seeing how blindly loyal the Guardians were, Noah let down his guard. At the very least, this meant that Noah's words held a lot of weight in their hearts. As long as he could ensure that these people listened to his orders with Noah around, would he still need to worry about the tomb taking the initiative to cause trouble? This was also the reason why he used such an extreme method to test the Guardians. Otherwise, Noah could have done as Gaia and Alea had said. He could have directly wiped out everyone, everything in the great underground tomb of Nasaric. That would have been the easiest. Now, seeing how the Guardians in Nazaric's tomb valued his orders so much, Noah felt that it was worth it for him to go in such a big circle to protect them. At once, Noah slowly retracted his raised hand, allowing the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons that emerged from the golden ripples to retract and disappear along with the golden ripples in the space. This scene stunned the Guardians of Nazaric's tomb who were about to attack each other. They stared blankly at Noah. In front of the Guardians, Noah sighed. "Seeing you not hesitate to attack your companions because of my orders, I really don't know whether I should be happy or not." This sentence undoubtedly caused the Guardians to be at a loss. However, Noah was telling the truth. In order to ensure that these people in Nazaric's tomb listened to his orders and did not do anything that would affect the world, Noah had to confirm their loyalty. However, after confirming the loyalty of the Guardians, Noah felt that a single order from him could make the Guardians, who were his companions, kill each other without hesitation. That made him feel very complicated. "If you really want to listen to me, then I will give you my first order." Noah looked at the Guardians. "Cherish your companions even if it is my order. If someone wants to hurt your most important companions, then you should resist." After saying this, Noah ignored the Guardians who were stunned. He turned around and walked straight out of the throne room. Annabelle, who reacted, quickly stood up and bowed to Yerbade and the others. Then she followed behind Noah and left together. As for the group of Guardians who remained in the throne room, they maintained a kneeling posture with one knee. They lowered their heads and did not get up, causing the oppressive atmosphere to permeate the air. After a long time, an extremely soft voice slowly sounded and broke the silence. "Hey sister," Malay said in a weak and dejected tone to Yal, who was beside him. "Did we disappoint Lord Noah?" All the Guardians present trembled and showed uneasiness one after another. "Is Lord Noah disappointed in us?" Yal was also at a loss like a child who had lost his way. "Then what should we do in the future?" This was also the thought in the hearts of all the Guardians present. At this moment, a strong sense of uneasiness filled the hearts of all the Guardians. To these Guardians who were born as NPCs in the game, there was nothing more important than Noah, who was the owner of the great underground tomb in Nasaric. The so-called loyalty had been deeply ingrained in the hearts of all the Guardians here. And there was only one person to whom this loyalty was directed. That was Noah. If the person they were willing to sacrifice all their loyalty to was disappointed in them, then there was really nothing more heartbreaking and unsettling for the NPCs in the great underground tomb in Nasaric. Among the Guardians present, only two of them remained calm for the time being. "Hey Demugos," Yerbade muttered to Demugos. "What do you think?" Hearing this, Demugos pushed the glasses on his nose up the bridge of his nose. After a moment of silence he said this. "Without a doubt, Lord Noah was testing our loyalty just now." Everyone, including Yerbade, agreed with Demugos' words. One of the reasons was that the Guardians present had more or less figured out the situation. The other reason was that Demugos was not only the guardian of the great underground tomb on the 7th floor of Nasaric, but he was also the NPC commander of the great underground tomb when defending against external enemies. In other words, he was the so-called military advisor. His shrewdness, at least in terms of setting, was the best in the entire great underground tomb in Nasaric. And Noah did not hide his actions, so it was natural for him to be seen through. "The Honorable Supreme is testing our loyalty. I understand that." Cosset spat out white mist from his mouth and spat out a voice that sounded like a gong. "The question is, did we disappoint the Honorable Supreme?" All of a sudden, all the Guardians present perked up their ears. However, regarding this, Demugos said in a somewhat vexed manner, "As far as I'm concerned, Lord Noah should have mixed feelings, right?" "Mixed feelings?" Yerbade quickly asked. What do you mean? We have offered the highest level of loyalty to the Honorable Supreme. This should have satisfied the Honorable Supreme. Demiurgos lowered his head slightly and said. However, the Honorable Supreme is dissatisfied that we even obeyed orders to kill each other. Huh? Mara blinked and said in confusion. Why? Before Demiurgos could explain, Yerbade suddenly raised his head. Is there a need to say it? Yerbade crossed his hands in front of him as if he was praying, looking as if he was bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. Because Lord Noah is a compassionate Honorable Supreme. He does not wish to see us kill each other. Yerbade's words made the group of guardians fall silent at first, but soon after, they all revealed moved and grateful expressions. To us, the Honorable Supreme's orders are absolute. Demiurgos concluded with a sentence. However, to the Honorable Supreme, seeing that we did not hesitate to carry out the orders to kill each other, it must be quite heart-wrenching, right? So that's why you said that Lord Noah was both happy and worried about our performance. Cossitz nodded in understanding, and then said words of admiration. As expected of the Honorable Supreme, he is so compassionate. The rest of the guardians nodded in agreement, looking grateful and full of longing. If Noah saw this scene, he would definitely not know whether to laugh or cry, right? Indeed, Noah was both happy and worried. The joy was indeed because he had confirmed the loyalty of the guardians. However, he was worried because the guardians did not place as much importance on the concept of companions as Noah had thought. After all, to Noah, companions were existences that needed to be highly valued. Noah's friends who had grown up with him thought the same way. That was why they were both happy and worried. They could not be considered compassionate, right? It's useless to think about it now. Yerbade stood up and said firmly, Guardians, we have to find an opportunity to make up for today's loss of composure, and make our Honorable Supreme satisfied with us. That would be the greatest glory for us. The Guardians made up their minds and nodded heavily. At this moment Demiurgos finally noticed. Beside him, Satya had been half kneeling, her head lowered, and she seemed to be silent. Satya? Demiurgos asked in confusion. What's wrong with you? The girl named Satya slowly raised her head. Her eyes were misty and she looked extremely intoxicated. Lord Noah is so powerful. I really hope he treats me like how he treated me just now. Suddenly, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. However, everyone was used to it. This was because everyone knew that Satya had all kinds of inexplicable hobbies. Just now, Noah's actions had probably aroused the masochistic part of her heart, right? Hence, Yerbade spoke with extreme disdain. What a lowly vampire! The intoxicated Satya immediately sobered up and glared at Yerbade. Yerbade also glared back, not to be outdone. The two beautiful girls stared at each other, causing the guardians to look at each other in dismay once again. Chapter 1159. The guardians of Nazarik's tomb were having a conversation in the throne room, but Noah didn't know about it. However, after seeing the foolish loyalty of the guardians, Noah had more or less made some decisions about how to deal with the underground tomb of Nazarik. Although they are all aberrations, at least they don't seem to have any intention of harming anything. Noah muttered to himself. If there are no accidents, then let's protect Nazarik. This decision would probably make Gaia and Alea unhappy, right? However, this was Noah's decision. Although he didn't want to see the world suffer any major impact, Noah couldn't sacrifice some innocent people because of this. If the people in the tomb were the kind of existences that wouldn't be a pity even if they died, then Noah wouldn't mind doing so. However, the guardians of the tomb in Nazarik were not as evil as Noah had imagined. On the contrary, they had their own beliefs. Since they could even withstand Noah's unreasonable probing, then Noah felt that he needed to do something for the tomb that had intruded into a foreign world. If Nazarik's tomb can be integrated into this world, then I can leave in peace. This sentence was probably the truest thought in Noah's heart. After all, it was impossible for Noah to stay here and take care of the entire Nazarik tomb, and it was impossible for the tomb to return to its original world. It was destined to either be destroyed or integrated into this world, and continue to survive in this world. What Noah needed to do was to integrate Nazarik's underground tomb into the world, and ensure that it could continue to survive. However, in the ears of others, this sentence was completely different. At the very least, Annabelle, who was following behind Noah and inadvertently heard Noah's muttering, had a sudden change in expression. She could no longer remain silent. Please don't say that. Under Noah's surprised gaze, Annabelle knelt on the ground. Her face looked a little pale, but she still tried her best to express her thoughts. You are the supreme that we are loyal to. You are the meaning of our existence. If we lose you, our monarch, our lives will have no weight. Sir Noah, Nassarik can't live without you. Seeing Annabelle kneeling on the ground with a pale and painful face, Noah was stunned. After reacting, he smiled bitterly. The meaning of your existence? What if I'm not the meaning of your existence? No, that's absolutely impossible, Annabelle said without hesitation. The meaning of our existence was destined at the moment of birth. We exist for the supreme you. Even if the world is destroyed, it can't be changed. Hearing Annabelle's cry that seemed to come from her soul, Noah's mood was a little complicated. Because Noah knew that what Annabelle said was the truth. From the moment of birth, these NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik existed for the players who created them. This was an indisputable fact. What was so strange about sacrificing everything for one's creator? However, Noah was not the creator of the great underground tomb of Nassarik. The real creator of the great underground tomb of Nassarik was the player Ains Uar Gong. Noah just took over this position under the arrangement of Gaia and Alea. In other words, Noah was not qualified to be sacrificed by the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik. This was also an indisputable fact. At that moment, Noah cast his gaze on Annabelle, who was kneeling on one knee in front of him. If I'm not wrong, you should still have the knowledge from the game, right? Huh. Annabelle was stunned. Maybe you didn't notice, but I have to tell you, Noah said bluntly. Now we are in another world. The entire great underground tomb of Nassarik has been transferred to a strange world. It is no longer the Yggdrasil that you are familiar with. Annabelle could not react at all. It was apparent that Noah's words had more or less exceeded the understanding of this combat made. Seeing this, Noah was even more certain. These NPCs from Yggdrasil actually still retained everything from the game in the past, including knowledge and settings. However, these NPCs did not have the pure knowledge of data that did not have any emotions until yesterday. It was just like how everyone knew that they were born from their mother's 10 months of pregnancy, but one day, someone told them that they were born from a crack in a rock, and that their knowledge was just wrong knowledge that was imperceptibly influenced by humans. These NPCs from Yggdrasil should feel that they had a personality and soul from the moment they were created. In fact, until yesterday they were just a piece of data. However, the knowledge and settings left behind when they were still data were left behind. Therefore, Annabelle and others knew that they used to be NPCs in the game, but they did not have the consciousness of being pure data. To put it simply, you are wrong to think that I am your creator, Noah said. I'm just an uninvited guest who suddenly broke into your world, and you're uninvited guests who suddenly broke into this world. Because we're both uninvited guests, that's why we interacted. In fact, before yesterday we didn't have any relationship at all. That's all. How can this be? Annabelle looked like she could not understand. You are our utmost exalt. We know that very well. This knowing itself is just a relationship that is set up. In fact, it is not like this at all. Noah also bent his knees and maintained the same height as Annabelle. He looked into Annabelle's eyes and said, I'm not the one you should be loyal to. I just came here with such an identity. If you're willing to listen to me, I'll lead you to survive in this world. However, I'm not the reason for your survival. You have to be clear about this. Annabelle stared blankly at Noah, who had a serious expression on his face. She completely lost her reaction. Seeing this, Noah sighed slightly and stood up. Think about it yourself. After leaving this sentence, Noah turned around and continued to walk forward. Annabelle was left alone. She looked at Noah's back and could not react for a long time. Am I being a bit cruel by saying this? Walking in the corridor of the 9th floor, Noah frowned as he walked forward. After all, the person who changed their settings is me. They are just following the settings to be loyal. In fact, the people who changed this part of the settings should be Gaia and Alea. However, the one who replaced this position was undoubtedly Noah. For Annabelle and others, it was natural for them to be absolutely loyal to the owner of the tomb in Nazareth. Now, this meaning of survival was indirectly taken away by Noah. In this way, was Noah not cruel? But this is a problem that we will have to face sooner or later. Noah sighed again and again. They are no longer NPCs but real living creatures. They should have their own will. Of course, whether this was good or not was another matter. I was just testing their loyalty, and now I'm telling them that the one they should be loyal to is not me. I hate myself a little. Noah let out a bitter smile, then suppressed all the distracting thoughts, stopped thinking about it, and walked toward his destination. Not long after, at the end of the corridor, a door appeared in front of Noah. Noah pushed the door open without any hesitation and walked in. It was a spacious room, a room like a conference room. In the center of the room there was a very luxurious huge round table. Some seats were neatly arranged around the round table. Noah, on the other hand, cast his gaze in the direction of the wall immediately. There a magic staff was embedded in it, slowly rotating. Chapter 1160. The room that Noah was in now was called the Round Table, which looked like a conference room. It was where the guild members of Ains Ulgong gathered in the past. In the center of the room was a huge round table surrounded by a total of 41 luxurious chairs. Those were the seats of the guild members of Ains Wulgong in the past. As for the wall that Noah was looking at, there was an empty space that looked like an exhibition cabinet. Inside there was a magic staff floating in the air. Its entire body was golden in color, and its design was similar to a scepter. It was a magic staff. The body of the staff was twisted like a snake and the top was shaped like a cup. It looked as though there were 7 snakes extending out from it. The edges of the cup were surrounded by the mouths of the snakes. It looked as though it was struggling in extreme pain. It gave off a feeling of sacredness and majesty. It also gave off a creepy feeling. Within the mouths of the 7 snakes, there was a gem of a different color. Those gems were all god-tier items. Staff of Ains Ulgong. That was the name of the magic staff. In Yggdrasil, every guild had a guild weapon. A guild weapon could be said to be the symbol of a guild. It was also the most important thing in a guild. Because if a guild weapon was damaged, the guild would be completely disintegrated. Therefore, guild weapons would not be used to display their power. Instead, they would be placed in the safest place. Even so, no one would casually set a weapon as a guild weapon. Because it was the symbol of the entire guild, the stronger the guild, the more powerful the guild weapon would be. Take Staff of Ains Ulgong for example. The gems in the mouths of the 7 snakes on the magic staff were not only god-tier items, they were also a set of items. Since it was a set of items, after the complete collection, it would naturally be able to display a strength of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 that was greater than 7. Not only that, in addition to the gems, the magic staff itself was also a rare and high-grade weapon. Therefore, the power of Staff of Ains Ulgong that was finally created was far beyond the god tier. It was definitely comparable to a world-class guild weapon. As mentioned earlier, a world-class guild weapon was not something that a player could possess. That was because of 2 reasons. 1. In Yggdrasil there are only 200 world-class items. They are known as the ultimate items. 2 world-class items. Each of them has a unique effect. Some can even destroy the balance of the game. For example, among the world-class tools that could destroy the balance, there were 20 tools that possessed unparalleled extraordinary abilities called the 20. Some of them could completely delete the target from the game, but at the cost of the user being completely deleted as well. Some of them could request Yggdrasil's production company to change part of the magic system. There was also the strongest world-class item. It was said that it could continuously grow stronger without limit. After a period of time, the wielder would be able to conquer the entire underground tomb of Nazareth. Of course, the world-class items named 20 were too powerful, and would disappear after one use. Although the rest of the world-class items weren't like this, since it was a world-class item like the 20, its effects and uses could be imagined. It was easy to imagine the power of the Staff of Ains Ulgong, which was comparable to such a world-class item. Unfortunately, it's going to be mine now. Noah, who was standing in front of the Staff of Ains Ulgong, reached out his hand and held the staff. Wong! The moment Noah held the Staff of Ains Ulgong in his hand, the Staff of Ains Ulgong emitted a flickering reddish-black light. In the light, faces full of pain appeared one after another. Then they collapsed and disappeared. Then they appeared again and again. It was so realistic that one could almost hear the painful wails. This scene made Noah frown. How bad of a taste is this? In fact, if he thought about it carefully, since the creatures in the underground tomb of Nasaric were all aliens, then the nature of the player who created the stronghold Ains Uar Gong was obvious. It must be the kind of existence that was like a villain and evil, right? And this kind of setting would indeed make some people feel excited. Unfortunately, Noah was not one of them. He did not have the twisted mentality of feeling happy when he saw others in pain. Naturally, he would be a little unhappy. Forget it. Noah removed the staff of Ains Uar Gong from his body. For the underground tomb of Nasaric, this staff is still very important. I'll take it with me for now. When he held the staff of Ains Uar Gong, Noah could clearly feel that his abilities in all aspects had improved. Could this be considered a characteristic of equipment that was born in the game? For example, it could increase his attributes. Moreover, the staff of Ains Uar Gong could not only increase his attributes, but it also had many hidden skills in magic. Among them, there were even some skills and magic effects that surprised Noah. In terms of functions and effects, this staff is probably comparable to an X-grade relic, right? This was not an exaggeration. This was because Noah realized that if he used the staff of Ains Uar Gong, he could even do something as ridiculous as resurrecting the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric. As for resurrection, even in Noah's treasure vault, he could not find a relic that had the same effect. With this ability, how could the staff of Ains Uar Gong not be an X-grade relic? However, this is also related to the different worlds, right? Noah held the staff of Ains Uar Gong tightly and said to himself, after all, resurrection is a common occurrence in the game. In the eyes of the people here, this ability might not be that impressive, right? With this thought in mind, Noah let go of the staff of Ains Uar Gong. Virum. A golden ripple immediately appeared from the space and swallowed the staff of Ains Uar Gong. Both of them disappeared into the air. Then Noah looked around and left the room called the Round Table. After leaving the room called the Round Table, Noah walked in the direction of his own room. What surprised Noah was that at the door of the room, with Yerbade as the leader, a group of guardians were all there, and they all looked uneasy. Master Noah! After noticing Noah's arrival, the group of guardians was suddenly happy, then shocked, and immediately knelt down on one knee one by one. Among them, Yerbade and Male's expressions were more or less a little nervous. That was natural. Not long ago, Noah was so rude and unreasonable to them. It was natural for them to behave like this. Noah did not feel that there was anything wrong with this. When he chose to use this method to test what kind of people these guardians were, Noah more or less guessed the result. Therefore, Noah did not want to correct anything. He directly went forward and asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Why are you all gathered in this place?" This sentence made the group of guardians excited. How can you say that this is a place like this? Yerbade looked like he was trying to express something. This is the residence of the Supreme Being. To us, this is the most sacred place. The group of guardians also nodded vigorously, which made Noah raise his eyebrows. I treated you like that just now, and you still treat me as a Supreme Being? Please don't say that. Zaisha looked more agitated than Yerbade and said this with a red face. To be treated like that by the Supreme Being, that is also a gift to us. That's right. It is a gift. Please continue to whip us like that. Suddenly, the rest of the guardians showed a look of wanting to refute but not knowing how to refute. Noah, on the other hand, could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Why do I feel that the guardians of the first, second, and third levels seem to be a little dangerous?